Good morning. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors on Tuesday, September 12th at 9:30 a.m. Curtis, let's begin with a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Arenas?
Here.
Supervisor Chavez?
Here.
Supervisor Simidian?
Here.
Vice President Lee?
Present.
President Alberg?
I'm here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Supervisor Chavez, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, please stand if you're able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will turn to my colleague, Vice President Lee, to introduce this morning's invocator.
Thank you, President Ellenberg. Good morning, everyone. As we near the beginning of our National Hispanic Heritage Month this Friday, celebrated between 15th of September to the 15th of October, we have the opportunity to reflect on our rich and expansive Hispanic Latino roots going back to 70 years before the programs landed at Plymouth Rock. This is an opportunity to celebrate our ancestry in connection to most of the countries of North, Central, and South America, as well as Spain. Latin American's history has gone back more than 500 years. Many years before the United States of America even existed, the United Provinces of Spain expanded over half of the North American territory, including California, Oregon, Nevada, Idaho, Colorado, New Mexico, Kansas, Montana, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and even Alaska. So although it is often erroneously thought of as an immigrant holiday, we here in Santa Clara County will be celebrating the 213th anniversary of independence from Spain this weekend. And to help us celebrate, I would like to invite Elena Robles, who also happens to be the chair of our Comité, SCC Employee Coalition serving our Spanish-speaking clients here, and our Grito de la Cultura Academy to put us all in the spirit of celebration. Come on up.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Elena Robles. I've been teaching folklorico for 52 years in this county and the state and the nation. And I brought with you a brand new class of kids that started under the auspices of the county. We were given the Vasque Salon on the first floor to practice, and they have 8 classes. You're going to see them perform a community service because they don't do just regular performances. They sign up, they do community service. They know that at any age, they have something to contribute to their community. Thank you for the invitation, Supervisor Lee. I'm going to get out of the way. We're going to do a dance that's so appropriate. Sometimes we wonder about how difficult it is to get things done in the county, because I know that. But imagine back when we were part of Spain and we had to ask Guadalajara for permission. And so over land and sea, and then over sea and land, to get the answer to whatever it was we wanted to do or spend money on, we've come a long way. So for all of you, Guadalajara from Jalisco, Mexico, and El Grito de la Cultura. Thank you.
la birria junto al mariachi, en los parianes y alfarerías suenan con triste melancolía. Guadalajara rosa, quiero decirte una cosa, tú que conservas agua del pozo en tus mujeres lo más hermoso. Guadalajara, Guadalajara, tienes el alma más mexicana. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay.
Thank you so much.
We're going to take a picture. I think we'll need to get the mic. Every day should start with such celebrations of joy. Life, of course, is both joy and sorrow, and with that segue, I am going to announce an adjournment of this meeting in memory of Richard Wittenberg. Richard Wittenberg, a beloved husband, father, grandfather, and friend, died peacefully in his home in Ventura on Sunday, August 20th, one day after the 61st anniversary of his marriage to his beloved wife, Joyce. Richard was 83. For 17 years, he was the county executive in Ventura County, followed by 8 years in that role right here in Santa Clara County. Richard was the first Jewish county executive hired in California and the longest tenured holder of that position when he retired. Richard truly loved our county. My aunt, Ruth Sporer, a dear friend of Richard and Joyce, said to me, "For Richard, the sun rose and set on Joyce and their children, but after that, he poured all his love into ensuring that the county gained financial stability, operated with integrity and compassion, and took care of everyone who needed help. He always had a quiet confidence about him, warm, approachable, highly intelligent, but never focused on himself. Life was about what Richard did for others. In his work and life, Richard was successful because he invested in relationships. With wit and wisdom, curiosity and care, Richard bridged divides and brought people together. He was born in New York City in 1950. When he was just 9 years old, his father, David, died. His mother, Dora, an immigrant from Vitebsk, Russia, now Belarus, moved her 3 children from New York to California in search of a better life. She took jobs in bakeries across Los Angeles, and Richard grew up knowing the pain of loss and the importance of hard work. He earned a scholarship to and studied political science at UCLA, graduated with Phi Beta Kappa honors, and was valedictorian of his class. During his undergrad years, Richard was a member of the wrestling team. All the athletic teams ate dinner together, and the wrestlers often sat near the basketball players. That positioning afforded Richard many opportunities to chat with famed coach John Wooden, and for the rest of his life, Richard referred to the wisdom he had gained from the great coach. Richard also earned his law degree from UCLA and met his wife Joyce there. So all in all, UCLA seemed to have been an excellent life choice. Richard was a compassionate leader who looked out for the little guy. He always thought he was one of them, even as he rose through the ranks of a career that began as a legislative analyst in Port Hueneme, a small beach town in Ventura County, California. He was 65 years old when he bought his first new car. Richard is survived by his wife, Joyce, his children, David Wittenberg, married to Heather, Kevin Wittenberg, married to Orly, and Laura Wittenberg-Siders, numerous grandchildren, and his sister, Phyllis Jacobson. His funeral was held on August 28th, and donations to the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research are still being made in his name. To Joyce, David, Kevin, and Laura, and to his entire family and all those who loved and cared about him, and to all of us who benefited from his years of outstanding leadership at the county, may Richard's memory always be for a blessing. Thank you. We next have an adjournment. Oh, Supervisor Simidian, my apologies, please.
Not at all. Thank you, Madam President. And I am appreciative of the opportunity to join in this in memoriam for former County Executive Richard Wittenberg. I had the privilege of serving with Richard, and it was Richard, just to be clear, for all 4 years during my first stint on the Board of Supervisors back in the late 1990s, from 1997 to 2000. And many of the observations that you shared and that were contained in his published obituary brought to mind the person who was in that seat when I came onto the board as a new supervisor, trying to figure out how to get to the 10th floor and back down to the bottom again. And Richard, I was not surprised to hear you say that Richard was 65 years old when he bought his first new car. I have to tell you that. He was a person who would be described as frugal by any assessment. It served him well as a county executive, since county executives are by their nature inclined to remind us regularly of the limitations of our budget. That was a role that came naturally to Richard, but that frugality, I think, was also just sort of part of his way of being, and as he expressed it to me, frankly, the result of a very modest childhood and understanding that resources were finite, sometimes scarce, and knowing what it meant to be without the resources you needed to do the things you needed to do. I teased him mercilessly. He seemed to find the cheapest restaurant to go out to lunch to whenever we went out to grab a bite to eat. He was a person also, as you indicated, who did in fact invest in relationships, and those relationships were real. They were not artificial, they were not political, they were not convenient. He had a respectful and respected relationship with every one of our 5 board members without regard to background or personality type or politics, and that made working with him here at the county a real joy. I want to personally convey my condolences to Joyce and his family, and I also want to acknowledge that I owe Richard Wittenberg a great deal in terms of my understanding, not just of county government, but of governance as well. And with that, thank you for the opportunity to share in this remembrance with you. I believe that takes me, or takes us, Madam President, to the next adjourn in memory. Is that correct?
It does indeed, for Nancy Capello.
Thank you. Colleagues, this is a somewhat unusual adjourn in memory for a couple of reasons. Nancy Capello is a name that I suspect is not familiar to most in the chambers or to other board members. That is in part because Nancy is not a resident, was not a resident of Santa Clara County. In fact, she hails from Connecticut. And Nancy passed away not recently, but 5 years ago. Which begs the question, why am I asking that we adjourn in her memory today? And I am asking that we adjourn in Nancy Capello's memory today, in part because this is a meeting and a month at which we are taking up issues that Nancy championed literally 20 years ago. In 2003, Nancy discovered that she had an advanced case of breast cancer. She was startled, in fact shocked, because she had been getting regularly reassuring notes after mammograms, including one that was just 6 weeks prior to the notification that she was in fact going to be facing a very significant challenge in terms of an advanced case of breast cancer. And as she did the research, the homework, she discovered that the reason she had been unaware and uninformed is because she had something called dense breast tissue. And as she did the research, discovered that dense breast tissue, which 40 to 50% of women have, shows up white on a mammogram. And as does a cancer, if there is one. And so there is some limited utility to the mammogram for women with dense breast tissue because that cancer shows up white on white, and it's like looking for a snowflake on a snowbank, as she described it. And so after she managed her own personal challenges, healthcare challenges, she said, "Why didn't anyone tell me?" And the medical establishment in her state said, "Well, that's not the established protocol," to which she said, "Well, then it should be." So she founded an organization called Are You Dense, a nonprofit that exists to this day, and got the Connecticut State Legislature to pass a pair of laws, or a law that in combination did two things. Ensured, because it required notice when you had a mammogram, if dense breast tissue was identified and it is routinely assessed, that the patient herself be told, you have dense breast tissue. That may mean that there was something there that we couldn't see. And by the way, it's an independent risk factor or identifier of risk for breast cancer. And so Connecticut became the first state in the country to say, we're going to make sure that when a mammogram takes place and that dense breast tissue is identified, that the patient, not just the referring physician, but the patient is told so that she can play some role in her own health care and keeping herself well. The law in Connecticut also provides that the cost of supplemental screenings, whether they be ultrasounds or MRIs, that can sometimes be more useful for women with dense breast tissue. The law in Connecticut provides that the cost of those screenings has to be covered by insurance. And so taken together, those two pieces of the law in Connecticut, which are Nancy's legacy, are really quite powerful in protecting patients in Connecticut who have dense breast tissue, which, as I say, is 40 to 50% of the women who come for a mammogram. She was not content, however, just to do that good work for folks in Connecticut. Her organization, RU Dense, was and is and remains, even in her passing, determined to spread the good work to other states across the country. I was pulled into that conversation back in 2011 and 2012 during my last term in the California State Senate. Had the opportunity to work with Nancy, and in fact, as you will see in item 10, we had the opportunity in California to propose legislation that required similar notice. And at the time, it would have made California just the second state in the country to provide that notice. But I have to tell you, the bill was vetoed by the governor in 2011. And when I put my head together with Nancy to say, what are we going to do about that? She said, well, it is my expectation that you will reintroduce the bill next year, Senator Simitian. And so I said, indeed, we will. And in 2012, the legislation that required notice passed in California on a unanimous vote in both houses of the legislature, and was in fact signed by Governor Brown, who had vetoed the previous version. And that is why that notice is in place today, because of Nancy Capello, because she didn't just take her own circumstance and say, gee, that's a shame, and walk away. She said, I don't want anyone to have to go through that unnecessarily again in the future. So that is why I am asking that we adjourn in memory of Nancy Capello today, 20 years later, and 5 years after her passing, even though she's not a Santa Clara County resident or was not a Santa Clara County resident. The lives of hundreds of thousands of folks in this county and millions across the country have been blessed by virtue of her good work. You may have observed, colleagues, that all of this is a prelude to the action I'm going to ask on item number 10, which is that we adopt a resolution in support of the federal Find It Early Act, which would require that insurance coverage include ultrasound MRI in cases of this sort, so that the second step beyond notice coverage would be in place. And for that reason, I am so pleased that we can honor Nancy Capello today. And I'm going to take my RU Dense button and put it on my lapel, and which I have kept over the years. And one last story, and I appreciate your patience, colleagues. In 2012, when we were trying to figure out what do we do to raise awareness on this issue after the veto in 2011, Nancy said, you got to get creative, Joe. Let's go. She was pressing me. And she had flown out, and so we had RU Dense Week in the Capitol, which was not really a thing, but we had a thing. And then the question is, how do you advertise a thing like RU Dense? And the answer was with pink M&Ms that were personalized, RU Dense, which I'm sure Supervisor Yeager would be horrified, but the M&Ms were very popular and were widely consumed throughout the California State Capitol. And after that week of creative outreach to my colleagues and the larger Capitol community, we never had to explain again what RU Dense was really all about. So thank you for your patience this morning, colleagues. I look forward to a briefer exhortation on item number 10 than would otherwise have been necessary, but it is a privilege to honor Nancy Capello for her good work here in Santa Clara County from the other side of the nation. Thank you.
Before we conclude this section of adjournments, I'd like to ask that we observe a moment of silence in memory of the more than 2,900 people dead to date, 5,530 injured in the 6.8 magnitude earthquake that hit Morocco so heavily and tragically yesterday. Please join me. thank you and much love and comfort to the survivors and their families. Item 5A for commendations and proclamations. We have a commendation for Felipe Velasquez as he retires from 20 years of service to Santa Clara County Parks and Rec. Supervisor Arenas.
Good morning, everyone. It is my greatest honor to present today's commendation to a really hardworking individual. And I know this group here knows this very well, and so I'm going to ask Felipe to come up with me as I talk all about you, Felipe. Come and stand next to me. So I'm going to tell you something that you as a group already know, but I'm going to share this with everybody else, and that is this gentleman here, he is retiring, but before his retirement, he has been such a dedicated and just compassionate county employee for 20 years. 21 years, I stand corrected. To the Parks and Recreation Department as a park maintenance worker, and I understand that we received a whole PowerPoint about Felipe's dream. And I thought that was just absolutely telling of who you are and how the Parks and Recreation Department admires you, but not only that, but your community as well. And so I know that it's part of building a happy, green, shaded park. I'm sure there's a lot more to that dream than what I'm about to tell next, but I'm going to continue on with some of what I know to be true. And behind me is what Felipe's dream actually accomplished. And as you can see, just a huge difference. I know you take care of acorns as they're very, very small, and for 3 years, just like a human being, you take care of them with lots of care for the first 3 years until they become, of course, a beautiful oak tree. And I just thought that was just really lovely example of who you are and how you do this wonderful work. So I know that it's Santa Teresa Park, which is where you dedicated your career, is currently just a beautiful green scenery, and of course we have images to show that. And this same beauty of our park creates such a safe space for our families to make memories and build community. And this is really personified through Felipe and your unwavering dedication to our county's parks mission. And I think you're the first retiree that has had a dream in a PowerPoint explained. And so I just think that this is just so wonderful that you're going to leave for us and for future generations this just amazing park. It really fills me with joy to see our parks being taken care of for our future generations. And I know that you can all remember and think back when you took your children, or maybe a child that was in your life, or you yourself, to reflect in nature and to join and be part of nature. And those fulfilling moments, especially if you were in Santa Teresa Park, but definitely in any of our regional parks, Felipe was taking care of that park to provide you with those moments and those beautiful memories. And so I just want to thank you, Felipe, for your dedication to public service, for serving our Parks and Recreation Department for 21 years, not only through just planting hundreds of trees, from acorns to oak trees, but really planting the seed of kindness by example. And we will have the honor of continuing to reap the rewards of your labor and love in our community for generations to come. So you should be really, really absolutely happy about that. I wish you the best on your retirement. I do expect that you come back as a volunteer. I don't think these guys are going to let you go that easily either. So that with that, I'd like to present this commendation. Excuse me. On behalf of all my colleagues and myself, for your impeccable work ethic and selfless devotion and attention to detail, outstanding customer service, and the huge heart and dream that you have for Santa Teresa Park and for our regional parks. And so with that, congratulations, and I'll turn it over to you to say a few words if you so inclined.
Yes. As some of you know me, I'm a man of few words. I'm just going to tell that this is probably the most rewarding job I've ever had, other than my own business. But this has been a fabulous journey. Thank you.
You really are a man of few words. But you show it in your work, and so I love it. And I'd love to have our colleagues come down and take a picture all together.
20 years.
21.
21.
Awesome. Congratulations, and thank you so much for your service. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your good
See you again.
And hold that forward so we can show off the picture. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Really, well done.
Item 6 on our agenda is public comment. This is the portion of the agenda set aside for members of the public wishing to address the Board of Supervisors on items, topics not on today's agenda, but within the purview of the Board of Speakers. It is our practice to hear speakers in the chamber first. So if you are expecting to speak on public comment, you should have a yellow card from the back of the room filled out and delivered to the clerk. If there are speakers on Zoom, the Zoom queue for speaking will remain open until the first speaker begins. So if you're planning to speak on Zoom, now would be an excellent time to raise your virtual hand. Curtis, do we have speakers in chambers or on Zoom?
Yes, we do. We have 4 speakers currently in chambers and 3 on Zoom.
Okay, this is a final call for speakers in chambers. When the first speaker begins, we will close that queue. At 4 Doug, were you signaling me? It looks like we're going to get another speaker or two, so let me just wait a second and see how many. So 5 speakers on Zoom, 5 speakers in chambers, 4 on Zoom,
3 on Zoom.
3 on Zoom. That puts us in the 2-minute range for public comment, please. Thank you.
All right, I will call the speakers for chambers. Please line up. Our first speaker will be Cole Cameron. Then we have Carlos Fuentes, Ray Shaukan, Carlos Hernandez, and King Surinder.
Good morning, Supervisors, President Ellenberg. Thank you for supporting Ray Lopez joining our commission in your millennial journey. I really appreciated that. I'm here as an individual vet this morning, having you consider an email I sent to you about a week ago and having you join us for the Veterans Parade in November as a council. You've received an invitation to have your own car in that parade, and as you joined as a council at the memorial at Oak Hill, I'm asking that you reconsider the individual cards so we can make this about veterans as much as we can. We have another alternative to that idea. I'm on the Planning Commission now with Rose and her team to consider having a vet ride with each council member as another alternative idea. So I just wanted to bring that forward personally to each of you. I have no authority from my commission or anything else. This is just Cole Cameron talking. And thank you for everything you're doing in so many different ways. Great to see you last night again, and what you're doing with Marcia is wonderful. So I just want to thank everyone for everything you guys are doing. So thank you very much. And I just really appreciate some of you being able to join us Sunday and remembering our various people that we lost in 9/11. Thank you again.
Good morning to the board. My name is Carlos Fuentes, and I work as a network engineer at TSS Burger, and I am a chief union steward for the SEIU 521 members. I service the county network infrastructure and maintain vital services that help the county maintain public service. The environment within TSS at Burger is demoralizing and ridden with intimidation and harassment by management, from work rules that have been created without notice to our union to negotiate, for changes in overtime practices that have been shown favoritism to workers from other work locations rather than ours. We are being targeted for speaking up about the unharmonious work environments. We have filed petitions and grievances and are being intimidated and retaliated against for speaking up. We need the board to intervene, as ESA has failed to follow through on addressing these matters. We have raised these concerns to our director, and in return we receive hostile responses that if we wish to find other jobs, they understand. All matters have now been addressed by ESA Labor Relations as management refuses to engage. We need assistance for ESA's failure to address our concerns at our work site. We reported that there was hidden cameras pointed at work areas on August 28th, including photos, and others, and no one from ESA or management ever did anything. This is unlawful, and how can we ask county employees to feel safe and have reasonable expectations of privacy in public work areas when we are being recorded without our knowledge? We want an investigation in this matter and expect that none of us will be retaliated against for whistleblowing. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Ray Shokan. I am a SEIU 521 steward here today, speaking on behalf of our members. I'm a county employee for TSS department. My role is vital to the county as I provide backbone networks to the county in order for all technologies to operate. These technologies are vital for the county residents as well as the internal staff. As stewards, we try to resolve matters at the lowest possible level to try and reach a resolution and improve communication. Unfortunately, our management prefers to disregard and respond unprofessionally to our stewards about matters that are subject to meet and confer under the MMBA. The blatant disregard is not acceptable to our union and us as stewards, and we come here to ask you to investigate the matter and hold those illegally recording or monitoring staff accountable. We cannot continue under these intolerable working conditions and ask the board for your help. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, board. My name is Carlos Hernandez. I'm a senior network engineer. I also work under TSS. I've been with the county for over 21 years, and I stand beside my peers. Our work environment has been very hostile. We've been through a number of reorgs. There's been a lot of confusion. And I think, I also echo the concerns of my peers. It's just a very unharmonious work environment. Issues that have been brought to our executive management leadership, and it's been an ongoing situation for years, maybe a couple years, and we would like to have the matters investigated, addressed, and dealt with, as it has been very troubling, to say the least. It affects, personal lives as well as our work environment. So we all strive to do and provide good service, but, it makes it very difficult when we're having to deal with personal issues, as have been mentioned. Thank you very much.
Madam President, before we move on to the folks who are waiting to speak, forgive me, I didn't realize there was someone else still in chambers. My apologies, Madam President, and to the member of the public.
Yeah,
Please
I
continue.
decided to remain sitting because my body is weak. My name is Surinder Kaur Dhaliwal. Former legal name is Surinder Kaur Sangha. In February of 2019, I told my husband I'm leaving him because he was abusive. A few days later, he reported me missing falsely. Then he lied and said I'm suicidal and had me held on a 5150 against my will. I spent 3 days without my freedom with doctors who tried to force me to take medications that I refused to take because I don't want to eat medications. And then he forged my name on a document to my former psychiatrist, and she called the hospital and told them to keep me there because I'm a danger. The doctor at the hospital wrote a very generic note and said that I am gravely disabled and that I need intensive treatment. I had a Reese hearing where my uncle from the San Jose Sikh Gurdwara, a good friend of my father's, came and helped me get out. A few months later, my ex-husband went and took me to court and filed to take custody of my son, which he was granted. It took me 8 months and about $50,000 to get my son back while I was employed at Google, trying to start a new life and live a happy life peacefully away from my abusive ex-husband. Then he took custody again, and your manipulative courts and unsupervised judges do whatever they want, and they took my son. I haven't seen him in 17 months. Last week, 2 police officers going about 80 miles per hour on Quimby Road while I was going about 35 without their sirens or their lights on tried to hit my car. Yesterday, a person you guys have authorized to carry a gun at the San Jose Sikh Gurdwara and be our security, and he is a non-Sikh, and has other people carrying guns at our Gurdwara, yesterday threatened me to call the police and say I'm suicidal, even though I'm not. I am in danger and I need protection.
Thank you so much. We have to ensure that everyone has the same amount of time. Curtis, do we have other speakers in chambers?
That is all the speakers we have in chambers. We still are 3 on Zoom.
Very good. Just one moment, please. Supervisor Simidian, did you need to make your comment before the Zoom speakers continue?
I don't want us to lose the train of thought, and I do want to ask the county executive and county council both to provide us with an off-agenda report on the concerns that were articulated by folks at TSS. I won't presume to know right now what the nature of an investigation would look like or a look-see, but I do think we need to hear back, and I would specifically ask that if there are issues of surveillance that need to be addressed, that they be addressed in the context of the surveillance ordinance, which our county has enacted for precisely these reasons. And I'm looking, Madam President, at the county executive. Thank you.
The matter is under investigation, and we'll be happy to provide an off-agenda report.
Thank you. And could I just, through the chair, ensure that that report back will, in fact, address the surveillance issues as well as any other personnel matters?
Yes.
Thank you again. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. How many speakers do we have on Zoom?
3 speakers.
Holding at 3. So a reminder that if any additional folks want to speak on Zoom, now is the time to raise your virtual hand. The queue will close when the first speaker begins.
All right, our first speaker is Blair Beekman. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. This is kind of a week of 9/11 remembrance things. I've seen Santa Clara County have a pretty good ceremony this weekend, a lot of local communities are doing. It's been kind of nice to see. Thank you. I wanted to remind at this time that, as local communities, that we kind of have an obligation to note the concepts of war that this country is seeming to continuously practice. And we have to make really strong efforts to not fall into the trap of war when we see it taking place and on the national level, and work really hard to avoid that here at the local level. And that's our power at the local level. We work towards healing for the most part and caring. Very much of a thank you to the words of the previous public comment person. I hear her story and I understand it, and a real good luck to her. We have a real care at the local level in how to address our issues that our national and state level needs help with to better work and navigate their situations. So, the work that we do with the surveillance and tech ordinance things, I think it's a really important cause towards that goal. When we practice open democracy and participatory democracy, that offers our better reasoning to, really question the concepts of war and its need of secrecy and opacity. So I'm upset that in Santa Clara County, you guys continuously practice secrecy with cybersecurity issues and with biometric camera use. We really could be, practicing open policies with these things and creating good examples for the rest of the state and country. Good luck how to do that.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Connie Romo Ludwig. Please accept the unmute, and you will have 2 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Supervisors. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak. I'm speaking on behalf of San Martin Neighborhood Association. I'm Vice President, and I wanted to represent our entire community. On August 11th, the news headline read, "Collision marks second death in 2 days near San Martin Avenue." That was for accidents on the 9th and August 10th, killing 2 individuals near the Highway 1 ramp. September 1st, the news says driver dies in San Martin collision crash on August 31st. That was somebody who did not even yield, let alone stop at the signal from Highland Avenue onto Monterey Road. And so stop signs and signals are not working, Supervisors. They're not slowing the traffic. Even if there are stop signs, people maybe come to a slow roll and continue, and then they speed on faster to catch up for the time lost. On our roads, drivers are trying to bypass the Highway 1 commuter traffic. And so we need rumble strips, humps. I understand the humps are not being used if the speed limit is in excess of 30 miles per hour. So somebody suggested doing the speed hump within 15 or 20 feet of the stop sign. That would at least encourage somebody to have to stop. And this is not a Formula One racetrack, yet drivers seem to enjoy the freedom on these 2-lane rural roads. They're killing people, pets, preventing residents from crossing the road to even pick up their mail. So I'm pleading with you to please take action and take our roads seriously, roads running north to south, to protect our residents and the drivers going through our community, because all lives matter. Thank you so much. Together we make a difference.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sharon Luna. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Supervisors. This is Sharon Luna from San Martin, and I'm also a member of the San Martin Neighborhood Association. I'm speaking today to get assistance for ongoing traffic concerns, basically on Foothill, new avenues, and other rural roads that are shared with the cities of Gilroy and Morgan Hill. I have contacted the proper parties over the years and received detailed response, which stated studying over and over. However, we need action and relief now so residents can feel safe driving, walking, bicycling, and getting out of their driveways. Until you experience the loss of a friend or even a stranger that passes in front of you after and then is hit and dies 3 minutes later, pets and wildlife, it is difficult to understand the severity of this situation. Going 60 to 90 miles per hour in a 45 miles zone is not acceptable. Please look into rumble strips that have been proven to slow speeders down. Install cameras to send tickets or position law enforcement to reduce those locals and those that bypass 101 and choose to speed. Waiting for more deaths or accidents when it is known what is happening with the rural areas, we would appreciate collaborating with the cities of Morgan Hill and Gilroy to implement relief to traffic concerns. Be proactive, not reactive. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
Thank you very much. Item 7 is to approve consent calendar and any changes to the Board of Supervisors agenda. Curtis, I'll turn to you.
All right. Items on the consent calendar may be subject to the Levine Act as indicated in the language on the published agenda. Any party or their agents must disclose on the record a contribution of more than $250 made to a board member as described on page 3 of the agenda. Participants who have a financial interest and their agents are requested to make a similar disclosure. We have a request from Vice President Lee to hold item number 13 to November 7, 2023. Item number 13 is to receive report from the Behavioral Health Services Department relating to options for mobile opioid treatment services. We have a request from Vice President Lee to consider item numbers 14 and 15 concurrently. Item number 14 is to receive report relating to the progress and updates regarding the opioid settlement and bankruptcies expenditure plan. Item number 15 is to consider recommendations relating to Armanino LLP doing business as AMF Media Group. We have a request from President Ellenberg to add item number 17 to the consent calendar. Item number 17 is adoption of Executive Leadership Salary Ordinance number NS-20-23.04 relating to compensation of employees, increasing the flat rate salaries of the assessor, district attorney, and sheriff classifications by 0.53%. We have a correction to item number 44. Possible action B should read as follows. Approve grant of an easement to the City of San Jose to construct, install, use, and replace a public sidewalk on real property located on county-owned property at 3100 South Bascom Avenue, San Jose. We have a correction to item number 49. Possible action B should read as follows. Supervisor Chavez nominates Liz Stewart for reappointment to the Child Abuse Prevention Council, seat number 14. That concludes the consent calendar update.
Thank you very much. I'll look down the row for any further changes by my colleague, Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you. I wanted to leave these two items on. Thank you. I want to leave these items on the agenda, but I wanted to make comments to them. One is on item 27. This is a Public Health Department receiving $5.27 million grant for CalFresh Healthy Living Program. And what I wanted to request from our public health staff is that through the Children's Family Seniors Committee, if they could come back with the policy initiatives and frameworks early in the process so as to better help us understand what kind of policies would be recommended. And in particular, I'm interested in understanding policies that are really at a county level, those that are at a state, or those that are at a city level, and the plans to effectuate those. And colleagues, what you'll see in the report is there's a goal of reaching 150,000 people through those policies, which is why I'm very interested in understanding what those are before they're launched. Item 28 is the $300,000 grant for the PEACE program for violence and health, for violence prevention and health improvement strategies in East San Jose. And at the Children's Family Seniors Committee, we've been discussing at a
serious level, what of the practices and strategies should be kept within the county? What are those that should be kept within cities? And so one of the outcomes that I'd like to see from here is a response to that question as part of what they learn through this process is, again, what are those strategies that could and should be implemented by cities? And then second, there's a really great list of folks to do outreach with, but one thing that is missing is that we have a lot of nonprofit organizations in our community that are looking at violence prevention, both gun violence and other kinds of violence prevention, that I want to make sure are included in discussions, outreach, and implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Simitian.
Thank you, Madam President. I will be an abstention on item number 17, which, as I understand it, is now likely to be part of our consent calendar. And I want to indicate, as I have done since the beginning of the year, that we have been advised that certain items on the consent calendar may be subject to the Levine Act, as indicated in the language in our published agenda. Specifically, we have been advised that items 22, 25, 28, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 41, 44, 45, and 54 on the consent calendar may be subject to the Levine Act. We have also been advised that pursuant to state law, any party or their agents must disclose on the record a contribution of more than $250 made to a board member as described on page 3 of our agenda. So accordingly, I want to ask at this time that if any party or agent has made such a contribution, that they disclose that contribution immediately so that I may promptly recuse myself. And I would also ask that if any participant in these proceedings, as defined by the Levine Act, has made such a contribution, that they disclose that contribution immediately so that I may promptly recuse myself. And I would also ask that if any employee of the county counsel's office or of the clerk of the board's office or any other member of county staff or any member of the public knows of any reason I should recuse myself under the Levine Act, that they please disclose that information immediately so that I may promptly recuse myself. Thank you, Madam President.
Supervisor Lee.
Thank you. I'm actually going to comment on item 9, which I don't believe is on consent right now, but there's been a request to see if we could get this to come back to the, instead of coming back to Board of Supervisors on October 17th, we'd like to amend the recommended action language to request that the report be coming back on October 19th, actually at the FGOC instead of the full board instead.
I'm sorry, just to make sure I understood, you want to remove this from today's agenda and hear it on October 19th in FGOC rather than before the full board?
Correct.
Any concerns with that? We can do that? Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
Just as a matter of clarification, Madam Chair, does that mean the item will not be heard at all today?
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else, Supervisor Lee?
No, actually, let me get that clarification real quick on this one here. That's why I'm not so sure if this is what I should be asking for this question. If we're trying to hear it, I mean, I think the report is ready to be heard today, but I think the full report coming back based on the item number 9 was suggested to come back to FGOC instead of the full board. That's why I was trying to mention this. I'm not sure if I should actually mention it now or I should mention it during item number 9, actually, when it comes up.
If you want to hear the item today,
yeah, why don't we just hear
you
it
can offer
today,
that
and then
direction
you can
then.
make it at that point. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so scratch that. Item 9 remains on the regular agenda. Supervisor Simitian, your light is still on?
Only so that I can vote aye in a moment, Madam Chair.
Excellent, thank you. I have a couple of comments as well regarding items that are on consent. First, in addition to moving item 17 to consent, I'd like to register an abstention on that item, please. Item 28, as Supervisor Chavez referenced, is an extension of grant funds for the East San Jose Peace Partnership. I'm very glad to support it today. And I heard your comments about children, family, and seniors, I want to highlight also that the October PSJC meeting will include a report from Public Health on their county-wide violence prevention assessment activities. I'm looking forward to that discussion on strategies to address violence in all parts of the county that were identified in the cost of gun violence study. I don't think there's anything inconsistent there. I think it sounds like overlapping work being addressed in both committees.
I think that's right.
Okay, thank you. Item 40 is the routine report out from the Health and Hospital Committee. Thank you for that, Supervisor Simidian. The report on 988 was informative, and I'm very glad to see the progress in the call center answer rates and the scaling up of our mobile response teams, particularly given the intersection discussed in that report between 988 and the 911 system. I'd like to direct that the quarterly schedule of 988 reports comes to the full Board of Supervisors so that we can adjust any touch points with PSJC and FGOC. That was my understanding of the schedule of reports in the April 19th off-agenda report. And I'd also like that next report to include metrics on the outcomes of the 988 public awareness campaign. On item 42, I have requests on 2 upcoming solicitations. The first is regarding the solicitation for custodial psychiatric services. During the PSJC and Reentry Network meetings, we've heard concerns from several of our court partners about the wait time for psychiatric assessments, and in at least one of those meetings, Supervisor Chavez also raised issues regarding the scheduling availability of psychiatrists under our current contract. So I'd like to direct Custody Health and the Procurement Department to consider strategies to improve psychiatric assessment wait times and scheduling availabilities through the new contract. Did you want to comment on that item?
I did, actually.
Okay, please.
Some of the confusion at PSJC, and without getting into detail on an item that's not squarely before the board today, was about who's responsible for the areas where the court had concern. And since then, I've had additional conversations with the court. The custody health assessments were not the source of the court's concern, so happy to report back on that information to the board, but might be worth having a discussion to make sure that we can come back with one comprehensive report back that addresses the various types of evaluations that take place for folks coming into our custody, both to determine what care they receive in custody, but also for potential care post-incarceration, and can address that more comprehensively. And so we just request an opportunity to talk with you about the scope of what you would like so we can include that in what we're already working on and have underway, which I think could likewise address what you're asking for right now.
Very glad to do that. Thank you.
May I, on that point,
Yes,
President?
please.
I do just want to thank you for catching that. I think irrespective of the category or whose leadership it's under, I think the point that President Ellenberg that you're raising about reinforcing timeliness irrespective of who our partners are, and having mechanisms both for assessing timeliness, but also for when timely services aren't being provided, what the implications in the contract are for them, and having those called out in the reports. Because I understand the point you raise, and I had a chance to learn a little bit more about it as well. But irrespective of that, it's a problem we have along the continuum of services, and we need to be much more, not just rigorous, but consistent with all of our contracting partners to help us address these issues.
Happy to address that, and I do think there might be some opportunity to tease a few things apart. We have a report back that's going to address more process-oriented things of who's responsible for which assessments, how timely those assessments are occurring, and then I hear your question about what are the contractual consequences of failure to meet timeliness for the types of evaluations that are primarily being conducted by our contractors. And for that one, I think to the extent the board would like an off agenda that provides some additional information on that, I'd suggest that be administration and county council rather than procurement, because most of these are contracting processes and terms that are handled primarily by the department and the county council's office.
Well, one challenge I would just say again through the president is that it's an issue I was going to raise later in the meeting on another item, but I also think it is worth the dive into the partnership between procurement and the departments, because I also believe that we have some inconsistency there. And I don't, by the way, I think it makes sense that we are going to have some communication challenges on the business side of the operation versus the implementation side. So I think what I just want to make sure of is that as we're completing contracts, that all parties that need to be invested in those and really their opinions take into account and that we have a way to look at those contracts and say, oh, if there's a problem, here's the remedy. That's really what I think. I just want to reinforce that. I think that's what the president was sharing, and I want to say yes. I think that's really critical, and I think that we have to keep an eye on that partnership, because I'm not sure that throughout the organization, I just think it's inevitable that we're going to have communication challenges there.
President Ellenberg, I might suggest that we pull item 42 from consent, since this appears to be a more extended conversation.
That I don't have additional questions. I think we're clear that we'll get an off-agenda report and can address further concerns. My second request, hopefully a more straightforward one, relates to the solicitation for sustainable tree management services. Last year, I provided an inventory grant to the California Native Garden Foundation to develop a pilot for people in custody to earn an ecological land management certificate through Evergreen Community College. The Sheriff's Office Programs Unit is currently working to integrate the pilot into an array of green vocational training opportunities they have in development, as well as plans to build a new crop-producing garden at Elmwood. I would like to see, through the county executive, the procurement department and the Office of Sustainability work with the Sheriff's Office Programs Unit and the Office of Diversion and Reentry Services to explore the possibility as having this contract be fulfilled as a reentry job training program similar to the cafeteria pilot. I think we have the opportunity to really multiply the good that we are doing here if we make this a program where people who have participated in training in custody have a related, well-paying job lined up for them when they return to the community.
We can certainly look at that possibility. I have a couple questions regarding your request on item 40, if now is an okay time to ask.
Item 40?
I just wanted clarity on whether the request to move the quarterly reports to the full board for 988 was in lieu of committee or in addition to committee, and also whether the request was to combine them with the quarterly behavioral health reports or as separate standalone reports.
I didn't mention that they should be coordinated with the behavioral health. If that's easier to do that, that's fine. If it's more complicating, that can be held separately. And I wouldn't presume to take a report away from HHS should they still desire to hear it. But my understanding was that the original intent was for the full board. So do you still want them in your committee as well?
I think one venue is probably enough, particularly if it's all inclusive in terms of board membership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll leave it to your discretion if it's going to be separate or combined with the behavioral health. Thank you. Is everything else clear, or did you have any other additional questions on any?
I think the rest of the items were
comments?
clear. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have public speakers on the consent calendar?
I have no speaker cards, and I currently have no hands raised.
All right, let's vote on the item, please.
Do we have a motion?
Oh, we don't. Could I have a motion to approve this consent calendar as
So
amended?
moved, with all the changes that were requested by the board and including the abstentions as well.
Thank you very much. Motion by Chavez, second by Lee.
Supervisor Arenas?
Yes.
Supervisor Chavez?
Yes.
Supervisor Smidian?
Aye, with the abstention on number 17. Thank you, colleagues.
Vice President Lee?
Aye.
President Ellenberg?
Aye, with the abstention on 17.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Item 8 is a public hearing to be heard no earlier than 9:30 a.m. Not a problem, as it is almost 10:40. Consuelo, welcome.
Good morning, Board President Ellenberg and members of the board. The report before you is our annual report to HUD, letting them know how we spent resources and the goals that we met across the previous fiscal year. I'm happy to take any questions.
Let me first open the public hearing. Do we have any public speakers on this item?
We have no speakers on this item.
Then I will close the public hearing and turn to my colleagues for any questions or comments. Supervisor Smidian.
None.
Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you. I want to just say once again how pleased I am with the Office of Supportive Housing. Consuelo, what you do with your team is actually, it's amazing, truly. I also just wanted colleagues to recognize that Distal Circle, the project in Los Altos, is also on our agenda today. And I wanted to say a very particular thank you to Jan Pepper, who was really from Los Altos, came to us early on when she heard about Measure A. And anyway, it's a relatively large project for a city of that size. So I wanted to say how excited I am because it's a 90-unit affordable housing, which will have 22 permanent supportive housing units in it. One question I wanted to ask, Consuelo, you is, as you look at the racial and ethnic composition of the families assisted with the CDGB grants, and this is part of the report on Table 2, page 8, I wonder if you could just take a moment to talk a little bit about how that ethnic breakdown relates to the the cities that are part of our county, and whether or not that mirrors the population that's in need.
Thank you, Supervisor Chavez, for the question. It is an interesting makeup. The urban county is comprised of 7 cities and the incorporated parts of the county. So there are some racially diverse communities within that, but there are pockets, for instance, in East San Jose, where we see a significant amount of lower income, primarily Latino communities. And then there's pockets in South County, San Martin, some areas of Gilroy that are technically in the unincorporated areas of the county. And because of the regulations of the funding, everybody we serve through the funds can earn no more than 80% of the area median income. And so we are restricted in who we can serve.
So one question that I had, and I think this could be something that's off agenda, but more just to frame this up for not just this board, but for future boards, is that the makeup of the partners we have for CDGB is different than when we're looking at the entire county. And so a question would just be, as we're working through our CDGB funding process, whether or not we are mirroring the need relative to ethnicity. And I recognize, like, not having San Jose and some other cities, it really does change the ethnic makeup of the community. But it would be good to see that and be able to understand how we're meeting those goals. Now, if it was embedded deep in the report, I missed it. So if you want to tell me what page it's on, it won't offend me. But if it's not in there, then an off agenda would be helpful, I think, for context for the board.
Thank you, Supervisor Chavez. We will take a look. It is not in this report, but it is captured in the consolidated plan that we have to prepare every 5 years. And in that, there's a big analysis. It's very similar to the analysis and background of the housing element, for instance, that looks at disproportionalities in the community. It looks like race, equity. So it is in that 5-year plan, and we are happy to provide an off agenda that
Actually, now that you reminded me, I'll take a look at it, because that plan is very helpful. If any of you haven't had a chance or recall reading it, it's one of the most complete assessments of the work that we do, and so I'll take a look at that. Thank you for reminding me. The only other thing that I wanted to say, besides seeing Hillview Court in here, which is very, very exciting, I was excited to see Quetzal Gardens on the cover. It's just such a beautiful building, and what I always look at when I look at affordable housing is it designed in such a way that really respects the neighborhood and respects the people who live in it, and that was certainly a great example of one that does. Thank you. Those are all my questions, and I'll move approval if there's a need.
Happy to second. Any additional comments? Supervisor Lee?
No, I echo the comments that I think the use of CDBG funding, along with what we're doing here in terms of acquiring these properties, are so important for our increasing the number of, especially permanent supportive housing units we have. So that has been extremely successful. We certainly have continued issues regarding, like Hillview Court, for example, and Milpitas, in terms of the operational issues, which I want to separate from that we still have significant challenges that our office is literally working every week, if not every day. So again, I just say thank you, Consuelo, for working these issues, but we certainly have a lot more work ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you. We've already opened and closed the public hearing. We have a motion by Chavez, a second by Ellenberg. Let's vote on this item, please.
Supervisor Arenas?
Yes.
Supervisor Chavez?
Yes.
Supervisor Simitian? Vice President Lee?
Aye.
President Ellenberg?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item 9 is a referral from Supervisor Lee.
Thank you. Sorry for the early confusion there. Yeah, so item number 9 was actually something that we've submitted referral earlier, asking our staff to look at various recommendations to expand animal care services for a lot of our unhoused populations. Certainly appreciate our colleagues' support on that earlier vote. What we're looking at here is we actually found out that the HSSV, the Humane Society of Silicon Valley, has operated this mobile vet program known as Wellness Wagon. And this has actually been extremely helpful with this 36-foot mobile clinic out there. The problem we are having, of course, is the fact that it actually has some challenges in finding locations to park them. When we did tour the office a few months ago, we observed these vans. They're exceptional, and they actually provide 2 types of needs-based vet services as well. They provide the spay neuter for pets using mobile vans, which of course also includes vaccination, treatment of fleas, and also provide wellness services including vaccinations, microchips, nail trims, wellness exam, basic care, and dewormer. I just want to be clear that the parking space that the county provide may be able to accommodate both of these services. What we're looking for seems to be a very straightforward referral, and certainly it was my desire that with the team working with HSSV, we're able to cut a lot of red tape and find a way to expedite this process so that these mobile clinic vans has a reliable place to park the vans on county-owned facilities. I'll be asking our team to sit on the meetings when the administration meets with HSSV to make sure that the process is smooth as possible. One thing I do want to ask is to have this report, instead of the way the current referral stated, to come back to the Board of Supervisors on October 17th, instead to push it to October 19th at the FGOC meeting instead, because there's another item which is related. So I think we could hear both of those pet-related referral at the same time. So that's all I have, and I would ask my colleague to support this, and that's my motion. Thank you.
Second?
Motion by Lee, second by Chavez. Do you have additional comments, Supervisor Chavez? Do we have public speakers on this item?
We have one speaker on Zoom.
Let's hear that speaker and offer 2 minutes, please.
All right, our speaker is Bernie White. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute, and you will have 2 minutes to speak.
Hello, my name is Bernadette White. I go by Bernie. I'm the Vice President of Institutional Giving at Humane Society Silicon Valley. And I just want to say thank you to the Board of Supervisors for considering this referral. And thank you to Supervisor Lee for advocating for pets and their people and really understanding the importance of human-animal bonds. The ability to partner with facilities and fleet services to find locations for our wellness clinics and our wellness wagon for spay and neuter services is invaluable to the community that we serve. It will help us find reliable, easy to access locations with a regular cadence of clinics, which will ensure that our most vulnerable pets and their families receive the care they need. Last year, we served nearly 2,400 animals through our Access to Care services. And we know the need in our community is so much larger. So we currently host about 14 clinics a month and are growing in that capacity monthly. We're grateful for this opportunity to partner with the County of Santa Clara to create a better future for pets and their people. But thank you again so much for your consideration for this referral.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Let's vote on the item, please. I'm so sorry. Supervisor Arenas.
Thank you. I have a question, and thank you for submitting this referral, Supervisor Lee. I know that my residents are also very concerned about making sure that pets are spayed or neutered. I was wondering, I think that most of the programs serve Sunnyvale and Milpitas, and I think some portions of East San Jose. And so I was wondering if there was any other, if there were any plans on targeting any other areas of San Jose, particularly in South County.
No, that's a great question. HSSV is based in Milpitas, but certainly the reason of the mobility of the mobile van is that they could actually go to different places in the county. We're going to use this as almost as a pilot program. We'll try this first in various places, but ultimately the goal is that this will serve the entire county. Absolutely, South County will be included when this is fully implemented, yes.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I just ask as a follow-up, and I wouldn't have thought of it, thank you, Supervisor Arenas, for raising this. Will this partnership include our own Animal Services Department?
Yes, we'll be all talking together to make sure that everything is smooth, so we're not excluding any partners.
Yeah, and the only reason I want to raise this is that during budget discussions, both this year and last year, we raised just the constrained resources for all of our animal services and people being able to get their pets neutered and spayed and all of that. So I only, it only just popped into my head to say, as you're looking at this, it would be interesting to understand what those gaps are in services as well. So thank
Exactly.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Great questions.
Let's take a vote, please.
Supervisor Arenas.
Yes.
Supervisor Chavez.
Yes.
Supervisor Smidian. Aye. Vice President Lee.
Aye.
President Allenberg.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item 10 is a resolution called a resolution in support of the Find It Early Act. Supervisor Smitty.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I am pleased that this item is not on the consent calendar because one of the reasons that I wanted to share the proposal with you all is simply to raise public awareness. And so thank you again for your patience during my somewhat lengthy in memoriam and for your consideration of the resolution in support of the Find It Early Act. As I mentioned earlier today, California has for more than a decade had on the books a law which requires written notice from a radiologist to a patient if during the course of a mammogram the patient is identified as having dense breast tissue for reasons I articulated earlier. That information now is routinely included in the standard letter that comes following a mammogram, sometimes colloquially referred to as a happygram. The missing piece, well, before I go to the missing piece, that legislation, which began in Connecticut, as I say, that requires notice, is now law in probably more than 36 states the last time I checked. And again, that's a testament to Ms. Capello's early and pioneering work. The federal government, more than a decade after California took action, has finally taken action to require notice, just the notice, on a uniform basis around the country. That action was announced in March of this year. In September of next year, for the first time, there will be a national requirement that patients with dense breast tissue receive that information when they get the letter following a mammogram. And that's an attempt to make sure that every patient in America is similarly covered with that notice and to provide some uniformity for administration as well. What is still not the law, however, in California and in most of the United States, is a requirement that insurers include supplemental screenings where appropriate, like MRIs, like ultrasound, to ensure that for women with dense breast tissue, supplemental screenings are in fact available. If people have first-rate insurance, they may, not likely, but may have coverage. If they are out of pocket, obviously the costs are substantial and often uncovered, leaving lower income folks in particular at a disadvantage. I am pleased to tell you that at the federal level in Congress, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut, a Democrat, and Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, a Republican, have introduced, obviously on a bipartisan basis, the so-called Find It Early Act, which, as the enclosure indicates, would simply provide that insurers are obliged to cover the costs of these supplemental screenings where appropriate. With that explanation, I will simply ask for an aye vote. I will move approval of the resolution.
Do we have public speakers on this item? Oh, apologies. Supervisor Lee, did you want to comment before public
Not the
speakers?
public.
Do we have public speakers?
We have no public speakers on this item.
Supervisor Lee.
I just want to personally thank our colleague, Supervisor Simitian, for your leadership on this issue for not just recently. This has been something that you've worked on so hard back in 2010, 2011, 2012 to pass this in the state Senate. I'm bringing upon a very important issue for everybody. As we know, breast cancer is still the leading cause of death in many, many areas. And it's extremely aggressive. I have personally known friends who have been detecting, and basically it's really a life or death issue. Early detection of breast cancer truly saves life. When you don't get it found a few months, and once you get to stage 3 and stage, it's almost too late, basically, because it's so aggressive. So I just want to say thank you so much for your leadership and continuing on this for the past decade on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, if I may offer just a quick thank you to Congressman Jimmy Panetta, who is, of course, represents a portion of Santa Clara County, who is a co-sponsor of the legislation, and also, and I'm going to pull my colleague Supervisor Chavez in on this observation, if I may. You know, we've been here 10 plus years together now, and I think all of us struggle with the incremental pace of government on occasion. And it's, as I referenced earlier, I can't help but be struck by the fact that it's taken the federal government more than a decade after California, Connecticut, Texas, New York took action to get to this place. And while I sometimes worry, frankly, that we pat ourselves on the back a bit about being the first this or the first that, I am also mindful of the fact that somebody's got to lead, and when that's Santa Clara County, hopefully others are following, and more good work will happen in other venues. So thank you again, and ask for an aye vote.
Let's vote, please.
Can I just ask, I missed who made the second?
Chavez.
Thank you. Supervisor Arenas?
Yes.
Supervisor Chavez?
Yes.
Supervisor Simitian?
Aye.
Vice President Lee?
Aye.
President Ellenberg?
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. County Executive Report is item 11.
I have a few items to share with the board and the public this morning. First, the Department of Tax and Collections opened for business yesterday at their new location at 110 West Tasman Drive. We've received a lot of positive feedback about the space in the building, and DTAC services are fully underway at that location. Second, this morning at 5:23 a.m., we went live with our new computer-aided dispatch system at County Communications. This was a project many, many years in the making. It's a substantial and critical upgrade to our 911 call taking and dispatch infrastructure. It replaces a many decades old in-house built system and offers many benefits. I want to thank the staff at County Communications, TSS, and our public safety partners for all the effort over many years in getting this launched, and I understand that so far today, everything has gone very smoothly. Third, we have some good news from PG&E per our request. They've been able to upgrade their infrastructure to ensure that VMC and O'Connor hospitals are now on different power circuits. They were previously on the same circuit. This is an important risk reduction improvement in the event of a failure or other power outage for that critical infrastructure. And I want to thank the Chief Operating Officer and Office of Emergency Management for their efforts on that front. Since our last board meeting, we held a ribbon cutting for Valley Health Center Lundy, our new state-of-the-art home for our tuberculosis clinic and refugee health assessment program. The clinic is the only program of its kind in the country and provides preventative therapy and treatment for TB, as well as comprehensive health assessments and medical care for refugees, asylees, and other special immigrant populations. The new facility opens this month. The application period for the County of Santa Clara Employee Child Care Assistance Program is underway. The deadline is September 30th for the 2024 calendar year. Instructions were sent out to all county employees last week, and another message will be going out soon, and we encourage those eligible county employees to take advantage of this program. Finally, yesterday, the FDA took action to authorize a new monovalent COVID-19 vaccine to protect against the most recent variants and to deauthorize the prior bivalent COVID-19 vaccines that had been available. The CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices is expected to establish guidelines for the new vaccines today, and we expect to receive the updated vaccine supply sometime in the next couple weeks. As usual, our teams are working rapidly on updating our protocols for the new vaccine, and we should be able to start administering them as soon as we receive the new supply in late September, if not earlier. Because the prior vaccine is no longer authorized, however, we're having to cancel the currently scheduled appointments in the next couple of weeks. Those patients will be individually supported in rebooking their appointments for when the new vaccine is expected to be available. Happy to answer any questions, and that concludes my report.
Supervisor Lee, then Semidian.
So first of all, just going to your last point there. So we just got the FDA approval, still waiting for CDC of this new monovalent vaccines. You mentioned that there are going to be cancellations of all these currently scheduled appointments. Those will be all notified by email, and so that people know it's going to show up?
Yes, there will be individual outreach to each of those folks to get them rebooked for when we'll have the updated vaccine available.
Great. And do you plan to just rebook them first for the new vaccine because of the fact that they're rescheduled? Do we try to do that, accommodate first, or do we just accommodate everybody at the same time?
They will have individual outreach, so we'll be working to get them individually rescheduled.
Right, because from the news we heard this morning, they are saying that the recommendation from FDA is that the new vaccine to be provided to those who have the highest risk factors, seniors and those who have health risk. So I don't know, do you plan on allowing that to be given first before going to the public? So I just wanted to double check on that. You don't have to give me an answer right now, but this might be something you'll be good to notify us later on when the vaccine becomes available.
At this time, we're not anticipating a big imbalance between supply and demand. If that becomes an issue, we'll of course have to look at, based on the recommended prioritization criteria from CDC. But in recent months, there has been no challenge with having adequate supply and appointments for all of those who've been interested in obtaining vaccination, and as long as that remains the case, we'll continue to make it available to all those for whom it's medically appropriate.
Great. A couple of other things you mentioned earlier in your report. One is the exciting opening of a new clinic there in North San Jose for our TB and the refugee clinic. I have the honor to be out there for the ribbon cutting event. It was certainly a beautiful clinic, and how much work has been put into it. And I'm very glad that has finally come to fruition. I just want to thank staff again for all the amazing work that they have done to make it happen. Second thing is regarding the 911 dispatch for our county. As we have experienced significant challenges of hiring individuals working in our 911 center, one of the challenges I keep hearing was the fact that we had this system that our county established for so long, and it's very hard to learn. So hopefully with this new system, we're looking forward to be able to get those hiring done a little bit sooner. Is that correct?
Yes, we're very excited about the new CAD, and it should be a system that is more, for lack of a better term, user-friendly for our dispatchers, both current and incoming.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Not seeing any additional questions. We'll move to item 12 for the County Council report. Thank you, James.
Thank you, President Ellenberg. At the September 11th, 2023 closed session by a 3-0 vote with Supervisor Chavez absent and Supervisor Ellenberg recusing, the board authorized the county to initiate litigation in one matter. The name of the action and the defendant, as well as the substance of the litigation, shall be disclosed once litigation is formally commenced to any person upon inquiry. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for council? Seeing none. Item 13 is being held to November 7th, which brings us to item 14 and 15, which we will hear concurrently. Item 14 is to receive the report from the Behavioral Health Services Department and Public Health Department relating to the progress and updates regarding the opioid settlement and bankruptcies expenditure plan. And item 15 is the Fentanyl Awareness Campaign Services Agreement with Aramino LLP, DBA AMF Media Group. Greetings.
Good morning. I'm Eric Riera. I'm the Deputy Director for Behavioral Health, and I oversee the service delivery system, and I'm here to respond to any questions regarding items 14 and 15, and I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves.
Good morning, President Ellenberg and board members. My name is Zelia Faria Costa, and I'm the Director of the Children, Youth, and Family System of Care.
Good morning, Madam President and board members. I'm Dr. Sarah Rudman, Deputy Health Officer with the Public Health Department.
Thank you very much. Before we go any further, since 15 is a Levine Act item, let's have that announcement, please, Curtis.
Item number 15 is subject to the Levine Act. Any party or their agents must disclose on the record a contribution of more than $250 made to a board member as described on page 3 of the agenda. Participants who have a financial interest and their agents are requested to make a similar disclosure.
Thank you very much. Starting with Supervisor Chavez, please.
Yes, thank you. I first wanted to say how much I appreciate all of the work and movement that's been happening around these issues. And colleagues, what I wanted to do is I wanted to start by talking about each item separately, and then I have another issue that I just want to raise to get really for my colleagues and for the county executive's attention. So on item 14, this is the opioid settlement and bankruptcies expenditure plan. And what I wanted to draw my colleagues' attention to was page 3 of 9. And this has the chart of expenditures that are moving forward. And on one of them in particular, I wanted to just ask if the staff could take a moment to talk about the prevention and community awareness campaign. And in particular, I was intrigued with it seems as if there are two pieces to it. One is a new partnership with Song for Charlie, which I'm very excited about. And the other is somewhere in the document, it talked just a little bit about how we were going to be doing outreach with the FENFACs, and I wanted to better understand if that approach had already been something that was tested with youth of that age, and we see that there's some sort of responsiveness to it. Now, colleagues, I will confess that I met with our youth commission, and they gave me an earful about what we're not doing right. So I'm going to be sharing that earful with all of you. So.
Yes, thank you, and I can begin with a response around that. The public communications campaign proposal is designed to expand our outreach and engagement in the coming years being supported with the opioid settlement funds, and specifically targeting youth and young adults with the use of these funds to tailor messages to that population in a way that we haven't done so in the past. The FentFax campaign is an existing campaign. We have a website that directs users and community members to resources that are available to them, as well as information on the dangers of fentanyl. We plan to partner with Songs for Charlie to tailor messaging out in the community to specifically around youth and family members, and also use the funds to expand the reach of that campaign in a broader way than we're currently doing today. It has been proven very effective. It's modeled after our 988 implementation as well and public communication efforts. So the feedback that we've heard, and I'd be interested if you've heard differently, is that it has been an effective model at messaging out to the community.
So a couple of things that I would just observe that are in the staff report. First, as it relates to the 988 public awareness campaign, I see that the campaign's evaluation is currently underway. Yes. And one thing I would share is that I don't think we've reached even close to saturation on 988. I'm not sure everybody knows how to use it. And I share that because living where I live, especially in downtown San Jose, I'm doing a lot of education in the community about 988, what it's supposed to be available for, and access. Now, that isn't to say, let me also just acknowledge that 988, that one of our challenges is that the national campaign doesn't really reflect what we're doing locally. So we have a different kind of challenge there. And I think that really has to do with the fact that at a county level, you've done a great job of integrating services and having it be a one-stop shop, which is exactly where I think we need to be. But I don't think we've come close to really educating the public about that. So, and in the staff report, it does say the evaluation's under, I'm sorry, that the evaluation is currently under process. So what I would just recommend is that perhaps at the most appropriate committee, and it may be Supervisor Simitian's Health and Hospital or any one of our committees, that better understanding, or actually Susan's going to have it come back to the full board. So what I would say is when 988 comes back to the full board, better understanding where we are in process and where we anticipate being in year 2, year 3 in terms of understanding would be great. What I will say on the FenFax is that, talking to young people, one of the things that I've been surprised at is that a number of them genuinely don't understand still the risks of fentanyl. The way they seem to most understand it is if they've seen something on TikTok or on a social media where a youth has died or a parent's died, or a parent's telling a story. The request I made of all of you was to look to authentic material that's already being produced in the community that is getting the attention of the community. And if in fact it is factually accurate, look at how we connect to those authentic messages versus trying to craft something that I frankly think, I think it's hard to know its effectiveness. And I think now that social media is so ubiquitous that we should really be looking at what people are looking at. The folks who, when we went out and talked to folks with lived experience, actually D.A. Rosen, who's here with us today, when we were talking to folks, I think Jeff can tell you that people who knew about fentanyl could tell you they could go find the story that they heard on that they saw and pull it up for us in front of us. The people who didn't know about it genuinely just didn't know about it. So the way you've divided this up to work with Song for Charlie on parents, I think is really smart, because I think parents are getting information still on Facebook. Kids they're like offended if you ask them if they have an account. So I personally would really like to see this part of the program explained and expressed in a way that's much more rigorous. I think we've been doing some of this work really well with the same partners, and but it's not enough. And partly I think it's because we do have so many languages. You know, there are some parts of this that are rote, but through the chair, I would just like to ask that the comms part of this be presented, and I would leave it, you know, I'm comfortable with that being, frankly, in your shop, Supervisor Simidian, but I do think that needs to come back and just be touched upon by the board, in part because I think the communication piece is actually where we're suffering the most. Okay, so let me go to another issue, and that is that on page 6 of 9, you have, I'm really excited about the options that you have here. I think the option of having that mail order work, I think we saw it work with COVID tests, so I think this is going to be really interesting to see how many people reach out, how they reach out, and how that's accessed. So all of the evaluation on this is going to be really helpful. I'm excited to see it in restaurants and bars. I think, I know my office raised it, but we didn't raise it because of ourselves. It was really what the community was telling us. And one request that I would like to ask that we include, in addition to the list here, is at the bottom where it talks about major county events, I also think we should be reaching out to our partners at SAP Center, 49er Stadium, and other places that on an ongoing basis hold mid to large size events to see if they would also be interested in testing and in getting some of their staff trained on how to use naloxone. This idea actually came from a member of the press who said, well, what about SAP Center? And I said, good idea. But we have lots of venues, not just county venues, where this could be really helpful. And obviously, I know we're already looking at, you know, the fair. But I think, you know, when people get, you know, with our health department, people come to get health permits to do rather large food events, and maybe just going right through our own department to say, is this an option? You check a box and you can get a box with a quick video on how to use them. Because I actually think that one of the target audiences should be the event promoters and the event you know, like there's companies that do events for a living. And again, when they come to get their food permits, we could give them naloxone as well. So, that okay with everyone?
Yes, I appreciate the suggestions, and
Me too. The press has
be
been all
happy
over
to
it.
work on that.
But I thought that was a really good idea as well. And then here's another issue that I want to make sure we touch on, and that is that we don't currently today, this isn't on your to-do list, but we're having a challenge getting blood tests for people who may be victims of overdose. And one of our challenges is that it takes us about 3 months to get the tests back. This is a program that we actually through the crime lab already had purchased equipment to be able to do blood testing to make it faster for the coroner to be able to give results both to the police and to the families. But we've had some difficulty with the current equipment. And so what I want to ask is that I know the district attorney, and I know you're here, D.A. Rosen, if you want to add any comments after I have, I'd be appreciative of it. But one of the things that I want to make sure of is that we have all the equipment we need to test rapidly. If we have the equipment locally, we're able to test within days. Right now, it's within months. Now, part of the reason for that has been that we purchased some equipment that hasn't been working now for years. I didn't realize we'd been waiting so long because we didn't have equipment that was working. I think our staff is working together with, that the procurement staff is working with the crime lab to remedy this right now. But I wanted to put it on your radar because this is something that really should have been resolved quite a long time ago. And there are two issues that I want to make sure of. One, again, when we're partnering with agencies over the equipment they need, that we assure that we're actually getting the equipment they need. The second, though, is that I want to make sure if somebody pitches us on equipment that doesn't work, that we get our money back. And that, in this area, I'm really, really concerned about that as well. And so what I would like to have come back to the full board is an update on the disposition of the current equipment, where we are with accessing new equipment and what our expectations should be relative to how fast that equipment can be brought on board. Because one of the things I know is any new equipment that's used for testing in the crime lab has to go through a validation protocol that takes, I don't actually know how long that takes, but I'd like to get all of that back through a joint report from, you know, from your office through the county exec and the district attorney's office as well, and the crime lab.
We can certainly provide a report on that. This is the first time I'm hearing about the issue, so we'll look into it and provide a report to the board.
And I apologize, I was going to alert you yesterday, and then I went to the chiropractor never to return. So I apologize for that. DA, did you want to add anything that I may have forgotten?
Supervisor Chavez. So just for the board's knowledge and information, currently the crime lab, we test for fentanyl in two different ways. So when we're looking at what's that white powder that's in that baggie, we can test for fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, et cetera, all the different controlled substances. But then a separate kind of testing is required to figure out if what's in a person's blood is fentanyl, is marijuana, is alcohol, is cocaine or methamphetamine. It's different kinds of equipment. And so we've currently been able to test for a limited number of substances in someone's blood or urine. And so starting several years ago, we wanted to purchase the equipment to allow us to test for a broader range of substances in someone's blood, including fentanyl. We went through an RFP, a request for permission to buy something. I don't know what the P stands for, but we went through an RFP process to purchase the equipment to allow us to test for a wide variety of things in someone's blood, including fentanyl. We'd received a federal grant of $650,000 to be able to buy this equipment, and unfortunately, the vendor that was selected was not able to actually perform what we need to have performed, and so it's a failure. And sometimes that happens with vendors that believe they can do something, and in fact they can't. So we're currently in a process with procurement to request a single source process. We know that we believe there's a particular vendor that can make this equipment, and so that's the single source process we're currently in. If that is successful and we're able to get permission to choose this particular provider, then there is a validation process, as Supervisor Chavez mentioned. That takes several months to validate the equipment, but once that validation is completed, then we'll be able to test for a broader range of substances in blood, including fentanyl, and we will be able to do that much more quickly than currently, where we have to send that out. So the coroner sends us when the coroner does autopsies and there's a suspicious death, the coroner usually sends those to an outside lab for testing, because the substances that we can currently test for are limited to, as I said, methamphetamine, cocaine, and several other drugs, and we'd like to test for a wider range of those things. So that's the necessity for getting this equipment, and once we have it, we'll be able to test for those things and to do it much more quickly. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Then I only had one other point, and that is that on item 15 is the contract on the communication, and the layout of the, on 14 really is just laying out the overall plan. And so I do just want to encourage the staff to think about how to get more authentic content. I realize this contract is slightly larger than before, and I think that's great, because I think what that means is you're getting it out in more places and more languages. But I really just want to encourage us to look at what people are already looking at, because I think in terms of being authentic and credible, especially with young people, their bar is very, very high in terms of what they...
Excuse me, but I apologize. That was a spontaneous utterance of agreement. I apologize, Supervisor.
And I will say, after meeting with our youth group, part of our youth commission, one of the things that they really hammered home to me is that they critiqued our interactions with them, and what I appreciated, they didn't hold anything back. But what I learned from them was that if you're over a certain age, you might as well be, you're almost dead to them. Was one thing they made clear to me. And the other is that on the peer support that you talked about in here, one thing that they really wanted me to lift up for all of you is that peers by far was the most compelling thing. They thought that was really good. But what they said to me was, make sure that the peer support you have are people who are very interested in the subject matter and are not filling out an application for college, because again, which I wouldn't have occurred to me, but what they were talking about was that they know when something is real and authentic, and if it isn't, that will not help them it would be harder for us to be able to help the young people. So that was the second thing on the peer mentors. So I think as you think about who gets hired to do that kind of work, that we really should be looking to our youth commission and other young people in the community to be part of those panels when appropriate, because I really do think they're really interested in helping each other. They're really interested in being a part of the solution. They genuinely think we're just talking past them, and they don't believe that that we understand them. And they gave me some examples that would make you both laugh and cry at the same time in terms of their interactions with us. I apologize, colleagues, I do have one last thing, and this is on the issue of how we're expanding services for young people. I do just want to make sure we really are looking at doing education for all medical professionals that are interested in better understanding addiction medicine. I think Dr. Sussman has raised this with us a number of times, and I see Sarah, Dr. Redmond, I'm sorry, that you're nodding in agreement. I don't think I fully appreciated how little most doctors understand about addiction medicine, except that they know they're not supposed to give out too many pain pills. But beyond that, I didn't realize that until I started to talk to more medical professionals. So I'm curious as to whether or not in that body of work, there's a target or a goal relative to the saturation of that kind of education among primary care physicians.
Thank you. If I may, through the President, I think you make an excellent point that while in addition to the important work happening across behavioral health services, it will take all levels of medical care responding to folks impacted by addiction to both identify it, get folks level of care, and ideally initiate services when it is more straightforward. So while it's maybe a portion of what's described here in the settlement funds, I believe you may be aware that the Public Health Department was also separately awarded a grant from the CDC to help support this kind of preventive effort to support folks who are experiencing addiction and substance use and prevent it from occurring in the first place. A major goal of that effort will be for public health to work closely with behavioral health in educating really all healthcare providers across the county who may be interacting with folks impacted by addiction and substance use to recognize it and to initiate the right kind of treatment. And we'd be happy to provide more information and details on that plan.
That would be excellent, because I do think we should be thinking about what is the goal in terms of saturation. I think that's going to be critical. And then I do know, and I believe that someday we have to be at same day, access, right? Someone comes, they're ready, we have to be able to say yes. And I'm very interested in understanding as these expansions happen. I know we're going to talk about the mobile unit in a month, but as we're doing these service expansions, I'm really wanting to better understand, when do we get to the same day access? Like, how does that happen? And when do we as a county think we're going to be there? And I know we won't be there for every single meaning there may be some drugs that we're not able to do that for, some types of addictions. But if in fact we really want to address the demand side, the only way we're going to do that is making sure that people have same-day access, in my opinion. Not the only way, but I think it's a kind of a critical component of that work. And so if you could give some thought to that as you come back to us with other initiatives, I would be really interested, to the Behavioral Health Department and overall and understanding when do we get to that? What's our estimated time frame for that? And I guess, I think it's a goal of all of ours already. Yes? So when? Yeah, thank you.
Supervisor Lee. Sorry, you're looking surprised.
Well, I apologize. I turned my light off briefly, but I had it on previously. And it's only, thank you for the courtesy. I'm only inserting myself because I have the Levine Act disclaimer again. And since the Levine Act disclaimer involves recusal, it's a little tough to recuse yourself after you've sat through the whole exercise. So forgive the catch-22 that caused the intrusion, and forgive the need to repeat yet again in the absence of clear guidance from the state that we have been advised that item 15 on today's agenda may be subject to the Levine Act as indicated in the language in our published agenda. And we've also been advised that pursuant to state law, any party or their agents must disclose on the record a contribution of more than $250 made to a board member as described on page 3 of our agenda. I want to ask at this time that if any party or agent has made such a contribution, that they disclose that contribution immediately so that I may promptly recuse myself. I would also ask that if any participant in these proceedings, as defined by the Levine Act, has made such a contribution, that they disclose that contribution immediately so that I may promptly recuse myself. And I would ask that if any employee of the County Council's office or of the Clerk of the Board's office or any other member of the county staff or any member of the public knows of any reason I should recuse myself under the Levine Act, that they please disclose that information immediately so that I may promptly recuse myself. And finally, colleagues, while it is, of course, a matter of public record, and I don't think that's a communication, while it is, of course, a matter of public record, I would like to note that since January 1st, 2023, when Senate Bill 1439 took effect and amended the Levine Act, I have, in fact, received various campaign contributions, which, of course, have been reported in full as required by law. And all such reports are, of course, public, and I would ask that if anyone has any reason to believe that any of those contributions were unlawfully made, that they advise me of that immediately so that I may correct the situation and ensure that contributions that are not permitted are not subsequently given or received. And finally, let me just exhort any and all potential campaign contributors, please make no contribution which violates Senate Bill 1439, the Levine Act, or any other provision of the law. And with that, colleagues, I will say thank you once again.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Simitian, for that clarification. I actually have a few questions regarding, let's start with the issue of the settlements and the funds coming to us first. What I've heard in the news is that the Sackler families propose $3 billion fine to get rid of the liability has been rejected by court. So this is still being litigated, being negotiated. Does that mean that you think we will be able to potentially get more funds to our county moving forward, assuming that this $3 billion will be increased?
Supervisor, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy County Counsel Laura Trice to address that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. The current status of the Purdue bankruptcy is that the U.S. Supreme Court has granted review on the issue that you mentioned of whether there can be a release of claims as to the Sacklers, which is what they were going to essentially pay that money to achieve. So we're still waiting to see what the U.S. Supreme Court says about that. It could still be upheld. Presumably we'll hear from the Supreme Court by next June. And then if the Supreme Court does uphold the bankruptcy plan that includes those releases of the Sacklers, the plan would move forward. If not, then I think the bankruptcy proceeding will be back kind of at step one, and we'll have to see what happens with the bankruptcy in light of the inability to include the Sacklers as part of that.
And the proposed project expenditure and the funds we're receiving here, does it include the funds from the Sackler settlement, or do we not include that?
The $45 million that's referenced in the ledge file refers only to the Janssen and Distributors settlement. So that doesn't include the Purdue bankruptcy, It also doesn't include the 5 additional settlements that are in the process of being finalized.
Right, so given that's the case, it is likely that we will receive more funds for this type of settlements in the future, correct?
Yes, absolutely. We should be receiving more funds.
Great, that's good news. So that's what I just want to highlight today regarding that. First of all, I just want to say it is this dangers of opioids or fentanyl. It's not something that we have dealt with. I just wanted to mention, historically, these type of dangerous drugs and opioids basically has been around for not decades, but over 100 years. I look back on the Opium War, when the British was able to beat the Chinese when they were trying to sell this in Hong Kong, and when the Chinese were trying to sink this opium in the sea, caused the Opium War, which is the reason why Hong Kong, after the war, was being given to United Kingdom at the time as a way of ending that war, because of the fact that the Brits were trying to sell opium to the Chinese. That was back in the 1800s. That's why when 1997 came about, I was born in Hong Kong. I just want to take a little history of that. When the return of Hong Kong to China was being negotiated at the time, that kind of reminds people what happened was 100 years ago was the fighting of this substance, opium, being sold in China way back. So the fact that there's these highly addictive substances that causes people, this high, right? People getting the high and getting addicted to these very dangerous drugs has been around for a long time. But what makes fentanyl different, right? What makes it different? One is the potency, right? Potency, we're not about double, or we're talking about 50 times as potent as what we've been seeing in all these type of opioids. Number one. Number two is the availability and how cheap it is right now in our community is absolutely unparalleled. When you talk about people, we're talking about $5 to $7 a pill is how much the street prices on these fentanyl pills coming from Mexico. And so I think it is such a dramatic difference of what we're dealing with. And the fact that because it's so potent, it also causes people to react and overdose far easier than anything else we have seen before. I just want to highlight that difference is because of the fact that the reason why we're seeing what we hear the news, a 3-month-old infant and 2 San Jose teenagers was dead from fentanyl poisoning in just 1 month. This is something reported in the Mercury News a couple of weeks ago. And that's what makes it so different. I just want to highlight the importance of why this work is so important. I want to thank our staff for jumping onto it. On page 6 of 9, all these things that you're doing for the harm reduction is absolutely life-saving. And frankly, when we talk about Narcan, which is such a great product that's able to be an anecdote and when used at a timely basis, frankly, by the time you use Narcan, it really is too late, right? Because that means folks are almost dying, literally dying, right? From minutes from dying. So I'm very glad that our jails and our schools, right, this board has approved for that. We approved for the libraries. We are spreading to college universities and unhoused populations, and of course, talking about the VTA, public transportation services. Basically, anywhere there's people gathering, I think this material needs to be. You have like AED, right? We put AED in so many buildings. It's no different from that same concept. We need to get the Narcans out there as the last resort. Restaurants and bars, major stadium, whatnot, all that makes perfect sense. I know there's been a lot of concerns, for example, so I want to ask a question first. On the report on schools, 30 school districts in Santa Clara County, 26 has received training and the Narcan gets great. But this says also 6 school districts have declined assistance. Can you elaborate a little bit more? As in, do they say they don't need assistance because they don't require the training or they don't believe they need Narcans? Or if you can elaborate why they are not working with us.
My understanding is that we need to do more work with those school districts and having them be open to the training. There's a lot of hesitancy, I think, that we're hearing from a small percentage of the overall districts, and hoping that through our partnership with public health, we can develop some strategies specifically around those school districts to get them more interested in participating in what we have to offer.
And then maybe offline, I would love to figure out who those districts are, because we obviously have a relationship with the trustees as well, and I'm happy to outreach to them to explain the need of how this is, because sometimes people felt that, oh, this is an issue of those who are poorer communities, but this cannot be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, a lot of drugs are being sold at many wealthy school districts, even private schools, because they have the ability to pay for this stuff. So I just want to make sure that this is truly a pandemic that is hurting our kids in more ways that we've ever seen. And many of you have heard that. I myself was the first cousin who passed away from overdose about a year and a half ago. And so it really hurts deeply to everybody's family right now. So anybody who doesn't believe this is a real issue doesn't understand the significance of the how big this issue really is. I mean, just in terms of numbers, we like in 2022, I look at some statistics. Over 6,000 people have died from fentanyl in California alone, just 1 year. And these numbers are truly tragic and outrageous, and try to find ways to lessen this impact, of course, is truly important. The other thing I'm also very excited is how we are also focusing on youth. Thank you, Supervisor Chavez, for mentioning that. As we all know, I have 3 daughters, one sitting right here actually, and we all know how it works, right? Telling kids to do things, you think they actually listen to parents? Give me a break, right? Now, peers, on the other hand, are by far the most effective. It affects what they do, where they go, what they eat, or what school they want to go to in college or not going to college. That's why peers are so important. And I think that's exactly the point that Supervisor Chavez is making, is that we really need to work with the youth leaders to make sure that this is something that we empower them to do it and give them the resources to do it and make sure they understand they actually have a voice to push this at the high schools. I think that's a really good area, or even middle school these days, which is unfortunate. Having the expanding of youth substance use disorder residential services is absolutely necessary, and those are things that has been mentioned in your report. And ultimately, too, is also even babies. I mean, the fact that we have opioids getting to family and mothers. So I don't know what we need to do for maternity care when we're dealing with pregnant moms to make sure that they understand the danger of this, because obviously there are still parents who are users, as we know. And I think this is something that with our public health system, especially how we can make sure that our moms, in language, right, how important this is and how dangerous it is for their kids inside the house. So I just want to make sure these are effective strategies. And then regarding peers, certainly want to see if there's any ways we could do more partnering with the school districts, but any of the student leaders, if we can come back and let us know. One idea I've read earlier before, so many of you know I'm a big advocate of gun buyback programs. Get these dangerous things off our community. Has there even been any type of idea of buying the fentanyls even off the streets in order to get them off the streets? Because if it's there, is this something that we could take it off the street that way? I'm just going to throw it out. I've seen some of these programs being mentioned in other jurisdictions. I have never heard about talking about this in our county. If this is something, I would just throw it out to public health to see if this is something you could research on, how other jurisdictions have been working on that, if this is something that we should even look into to get that stuff off the street. Because if they could get it for $5 to $7 a pill, they are everywhere. I mean, we talk about issues of stopping at the border and whatnot. I mean, great, go try do that, but obviously it has failed. So what can we do to try to get that stuff off the community? So some type of safe disposal program, along with even put some resource back so that incentivize people turning this stuff in, I think is so important. Lastly, I just want to mention, I heard this story of a very disturbing story in the news of a nurse. This is a very strange case, actually. I think it came in the UK, where this nurse actually was trying to feed her own drug habit, was actually not administering the drugs to those women who was trying to go through pregnancy. So they went through hell. The pain level was really high. And goes, oh no, you're fine. And then so that's how she extracted these drugs for her own drug use. This is a legal drug, right? It's been used by prescription, and so I just want to make sure that I'm not making ill of a substance that, if properly used and prescribed, could be beneficial. What I'm talking about is when it gets to the stream where it's not supposed to, I think we really need to make sure that any way we can get it off the streets is absolutely crucial. And I just want to also thank, I know the district attorney was here earlier, for what he's trying to do to highlight the danger of the substance and how many, honestly, people have died and been killed by the sale of these very illegal substances. And yeah, so thank you very much for your good work.
Supervisor Arenas.
Thank you. There's been a lot of questions already answered that I had, so I'm grateful to my colleagues for asking them. There is just a couple of things that I wanted to ask about, and that is, I know that all the community colleges and the four-year universities have been trained and provided with naloxone. You know what I want to say. And I'm wondering, I think it's only the universities that have committed to vending machines. Have the community colleges committed to vending machines as well, or just the distribution?
That I'll have to get back to you on, Supervisor Arenas. I'm not sure.
Okay, that would be wonderful. I think that our community colleges, if I were to assume, they probably have really young folks who are going to transfer over to the universities, and I think they would benefit from vending machines as well. And I don't know if those vending machines are in the bathroom or somewhere discreet where nobody else can see that what you're purchasing. I'd also recommend the same thing for the restaurants and the bars. Not having it at the end of the bar, but inside the bathroom would be a really great place. I'm not sure where you're all placing it already, but just in case. And then the other question that I had was, how are we working with our public defender office and the court systems, specifically the drug court?
Could you be a little more specific on the question, Supervisor?
Sure. So if we're distributing at colleges, we're distributing to the unhoused, we're distributing at restaurants and bars, I was thinking that the folks who we already know have a problem and are attending some kind of court are there. And maybe the folks who are not in a court system but are known friends or family of those folks who are involved with drugs already are accompanying those folks to drug court or dependency court or any other court for that matter. And so I'm wondering, are we providing naloxone in those bathrooms, in vending machines there?
The two initiatives that I'm most aware of is that at the county jails, we do have the vending machines available, particularly for family members coming in or friends. They can access free naloxone through those vending machines, which also includes a training component to it. And then our custody health department also provides naloxone to folks coming out of the jail. So that's another resource that we're making available, as well as naloxone vending machines at our juvenile hall program as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about the courts. When you go in and you have a court date. So I'm wondering how we're working with the court system.
Yeah, that I can provide some additional information on that. I'll get back to the board on that issue. If we're not doing anything with the courts, it's a great suggestion about another channel that we can explore distribution through.
That would be wonderful. And I think this same thing could be said about the public defender's office, the same way that you do at the jails or at juvenile hall. I think the public defender office also has folks who are visiting who are potentially peripherally impacted or directly impacted themselves. So I think that's another system that I think could benefit. And I know as you're building out this spending plan, I'm just wondering, you took a look at, and I think it was some of the deaths and some of the overdoses and where those were happening to base where you would specifically offer some of the services. And so I wondered about if you also took a look at the programs that are difficult to fund, and if some of those programs were considered before others, or how did that inform your spending plan if there's programs that are difficult to fund?
Could you clarify a bit more on difficult to fund program? What you mean by that?
Well, either a program that has limited funding or that doesn't have Medi-Cal reimbursement, or, I'm not sure. I think you would know better than myself if there was any programs that were having a difficult time kind of surviving, if you will. And so I wasn't sure if there was any attention provided to that continuum. I think Kai has.
Yeah, not specific to the proposed plan. What I can say in terms of expanding our efforts at distribution and training and supports out there is that one of the things we're most excited about our partnership with public health is the addition of this data position to help us get a better understanding of what the community need is and where it is. And certainly that's going to be a very broad-based effort that looks at a number of different variables out there. This plan is our first pass, but I anticipate once we get that data piece up and running with public health, that we'll have much more information to make more informed decisions about where we focus our efforts in the future. I don't know, Dr. Rudman, if you wanted to add anything to that?
No, thank you so much. That's exactly what I would have highlighted, that I think, to your point, Supervisor Arenas, it has been difficult to see the big picture of exactly where the greatest need is, partially because this problem is so vast, is so complex, and is impacting so many different types of people in different circumstances that it takes so many different solutions and partners to enact those solutions. So, being more of a participant organization in behavioral health's process of setting this budget, we were asked for the areas we felt were in the greatest need of this kind of support. And I'll say the list was even longer than this. These were deemed to be the highest priority with expert input. But our goal in public health in creating these data systems and supporting partner organizations and county organizations with that information is to help make sure that that resources like this are targeted in the most important ways.
I appreciate that. I was actually also thinking about the court system. I know that sometimes there's not enough beds to refer clients to, and sometimes it's outside of the county system, and it's either a faith-based or quasi-faith-based treatment centers that the courts have to rely on in order to get a client in. And then that, of course, it's an option for the client to accept or not. But, these are the kinds of avenues that our courts are relying on. And so I'm wondering how we are interfacing with those systems as well. So I'm glad that you'll begin to have that conversation with the court systems, the drug dependency, or the public defender, so that they can help inform even further beyond our system, because I think if we strengthen networks that are outside of us, then we can certainly make sure that our partners are supported, even the ones that we may not be currently funding, but relying on through either the court system or any other systems that provide referrals. And Kai, did you have? No. Okay, sorry. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, I was going to make a few comments and then do a second round, but if you want to follow up directly.
I was
to
actually
something.
just going to put a motion on the table, but I'll wait till your comments if you'll come back to
Okay,
me for a
great.
motion.
Thank you so much. First up, with regard to item 14, and thank you for the information, and thank you to all of my colleagues for really thoughtful questions. At the August 29th meeting, Supervisor Lee directed that a more specific implementation plan on the substance use prevention and treatment strategies outlined in that report come back on November 7th, come back in the November 7th report to include timelines and responsible parties. I want to first reaffirm that direction and ask that the funding sources in support of those strategies, whether it's opioid settlement funds, the new CDC grant, or other resources, be noted for each strategy in the plan. To me, what's most helpful, and I believe for the public and our partners, is to see the overall approach to substance use rather than siloing our reports by funding source, since clearly we're going to need to braid multiple resources to meet the need. And I know we've held item 13, but I want to note that that report also contained several helpful notes regarding substance use prevention and treatment strategies in development, even in fact some that weren't included in the last BOS report on August 29th. Again, I think laying out a plan that bridges these big picture priorities is also is complete across funding sources and is actionable for the current year or two can go a long way, frankly, toward minimizing additional requests for reports back to the board and move us forward with clarity in expanding our system of care. I would cite, just as an example, the Office of Children and Families Policy Work Plan as an example of a plan that, in my view, clearly lays out the high-level objectives and strategies and links to specific milestones and timelines. And I certainly suspect many other county programs organize their work, county departments organize their work in similar ways, and I'd very much like to see a similarly complete plan regarding our address of substance use disorders. Finally, this ledge file notes an intent to bring additional opioid settlement funding items forward in October. I certainly realize that there's urgency in activating the new funds. I don't want to slow down the work, but in our role, in the board's role as authorizing the funding actions, it's really important that we have clarity on what we're building toward and how all of the pieces fit together. So I will make a motion with that further direction on the report that Supervisor Lee has already requested and looked to the county executive for your hopeful affirmation or the COO that we can get this substance use prevention and treatment implementation plan to the board in its completeness.
I'll second that. Part of the reason I wanted to make the motion is there were a lot of inclusions from colleagues that I want to lift up, but I'll second that because I think that's absolutely the right general direction.
Perfect, and I'm happy to add anything that came before. Just want to check in with the county
Just for
executive.
clarity,
or
were you
COO.
asking that the proposed actions for October be delayed until after that November report? I wasn't quite clear on the interaction between.
I want it all to come together so that we can see if there's a piece that needs to come in October for us to approve so that I'm not holding anything up, absolutely fine. But I want a complete plan and presentation with regard to our whole substance use response, much in the way we're moving toward with the overall behavioral health response. This one still feels more piecemeal to me.
And President Ellenberg, what I would request is that I think you're right that we do need a much bigger overall approach with timelines and all of that, and work plans and how we're going to get to entrance. I think on this particular body of work that I would just ask that until the plan is robustly and fully developed, that it be allowed to continue down that process and then be integrated into the overall planning process.
I don't mind doing that, and I think it's eminently more practical. My concern is for all of us, sort of continuing to ask for more, to ask for another piece that may in fact already be happening, and that not only can slow down the process to getting to a full report, it may just be redundant, and if we would know everything that's happening, I would rest a lot easier.
And I concur with that. Ultimately, I think that's the right goal. And to be frank with you, the bigger challenge is that when we discuss behavioral health, the intent of behavioral health becoming both behavioral health with drug and alcohol was that, in fact, we would have one single rubric for reporting, and we're not there yet. And so what I would ask is that because I think the point you're raising, I agree with it 100%. The real question in my mind is, given the direction we've already given on behavioral health and the presumed
interconnectedness.
Well, not just that, it's a presumed integrated. Then I would just ask that perhaps it makes more sense to give the staff time to come back to the board saying, here's how we anticipate being able to move robustly with behavioral health, and here's how we're going to break down those
As a subset here.
Right, because one challenge I have, to be frank with you, is that I think there are some areas that the board and the public have sort of had to intervene in order to jumpstart the direction. I'll just give you one example. You and I have been talking about detox and detox beds, I think from the day you got here, and even me and Dave before that. And part of the reason we were pulling that out is we understood that as a need. Once those needs get embedded in, then having them be part of the overall framework makes more sense. So on this issue, I do not believe that we have a shared yet process, and fentanyl in particular has, I think because of the very well framed comments by Supervisor Lee, has a particular urgency because of the lives it's taking now. So all that is to say that if you would, as part of the motion, give direction to staff to come back with the approach that they want to recommend, I would be comfortable with that, and that we continue to vet out the fentanyl work, frankly, with some time where we're anticipating it being looped up, maybe by June, so that it then gets integrated into the overall plan.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And looking
I
this
was
way?
going to add one brief comment, which is, I think, very consistent with both of the requests I just heard, and just to add one point on it, which is this. So I think absolutely we can come back, already are planning to come back in November with a more detailed overall approach around a number of substance use treatment related items that the board has had particular interest in, including with the timeline associated with some of the items that we've discussed a number of times. Can absolutely include more discussion about some of the items that were talked about today, along with that presentation, and try and articulate more clearly for the board how some of the specific pieces we're talking about as part of this report integrate to the behavioral health department and really the whole health system's overall strategy with respect to substance use treatment generally and fentanyl/opioid addiction specifically. I do think that would make good sense for this reason, which is the thing I wanted to add, which is the amount of funding that comes from the opioids settlements in the context of the overall amount that we're committing to these efforts is very small. And so I think I say that with lots of personal and direct involvement in a lot of the work that we have done as a county to achieve these settlements, lots of painful hours that Laura and I spent negotiating a lot of flexibility for us and other counties to be able to use these funds in the ways that made sense for our community. But I do think it would be helpful to articulate our strategies around some of these just in the broader context of funding, because I think the opioid settlement funds themselves are a small piece of how we'll fund a lot of the things that we're talking about. So talking about in the context of our broader investment in substance use treatment generally and opioid treatment specifically would be I think, really beneficial.
Thank you. That is exactly what I'm looking for. Thank you, Supervisor Chavez, for helping me shape that. And yes, whatever the piece is, 5%, 20%, seeing that whole current pie of what we are looking at and what our whole program or whole approach looks like, I think will be really helpful. So thank you for integrating that over the cadence of time that makes the most sense. Quickly, with regard to 15, the communications campaign, I want to acknowledge and appreciate very much the importance of these campaigns. I also understand the difficulty of really measuring impact as opposed to output. You can tell us how many people were reached or how many clicks or likes or whatever we get. But I'm really wanting to know how we can elevate that. And as we work toward a county-wide strategic planning process, I really want, and this is for every department, to have all of us thinking always about how we do continual evaluations as to whether we are accomplishing the actual goal, the impact. We want fewer fentanyl overdoses. We want 0 fentanyl deaths. We want, where do we want to get? And then how do we measure that what we are doing not only demonstrates the output that we wanted, but that truly is moving the needle and making our community healthier? And I know that that's a very hard metric, especially with public health, but I don't know how we can otherwise determine if we're doing the right things. And it's just a general request overall, but if anybody wants to respond to either the ease or absurdity or complexity of doing that, I'm happy to hear it.
I might just invite Dr. Redmond to speak a little bit about some of the work that public health is hoping to do in that vein, and for which they've been also incredibly successful in getting some funding to support really innovative path-breaking work around those questions.
Thank you so much. Exactly to your point, Madam President, I think as you described, it is very difficult, especially with activities like communication and outreach, to demonstrate the impact and real safety and health changes that come from it. But it is something public health has explicit experience in and some ideas about in this venue, many of which are akin to Supervisor Chavez's recommendations about how to do the communication itself. But what you're describing overall of evaluating the impact of each of these proposed strategies, as well as the additional strategies funded outside of this area that we'll be coming back with in November, is exactly part of what public health has proposed, in part with the research and evaluation specialists funded here, but also funded in much greater detail with the CDC grant we've just received. So it's both a combination of making sure that folks have the data they need to understand where the harm is happening and why, so that they can focus their efforts, and then to evaluate those efforts. And to the best we are able, and with the resources we do have, understand what's making the greatest difference and how we can double down there and back away from the activities that we learn aren't having the impact they hope they will.
That's what I'm looking for. Great. I really appreciate that, Dr. Redmond. Thank you. We do have a public speaker, but I want to make sure my colleagues are satisfied. Supervisor Chavez, you want to add further direction to the motion?
I can wait till after the public speaker. I'm taking notes on what you just said.
Okay. Supervisor Lee, do you want to make additional comments now?
Just actually a question about funding on those Narcan kits. Based on the report, we put down 6,000 Narcan kits based on the budget we have here. Assuming we're successful, those kits will be gone with the 2 million people county that we have. I just want to see, I've heard that there's some funding coming from the state, that the governor's office is funding a lot of the Narcan kits as well. Maybe whether you have the answer or not, I just want to make sure that we do not stop distributing Narcan kits because we run out of them or run out of funding. I just want to make sure that, please bring that to the board if that becomes an issue.
We absolutely will not stop on that initiative around a specific number. We have a number of different opportunities to secure Narcan kits. We can purchase them directly, which is what we put in the proposal, but we also have the option of getting kits from the state. And then, as you mentioned, the governor's proposal to actually provide funding to counties for additional Narcan kits. So multiple different channels that we can use to get those kits in the hands of our residents. And if we use them all up, we'll just look for other opportunities to purchase or acquire additional kits to get them out there.
Good. Thank you very much.
Supervisor Simitian?
How close to using them all up are we?
Not close yet, but we are making great progress, and I think we'll see some bigger impacts by late fall in terms of our proposed plan.
I would just ask, and I'm happy to follow up with the county executive individually on this as well, that we not get ourselves in a position where we have identified opportunities for training and distribution and then discover we don't have any Narcan to distribute. So I'd rather we had a little surplus than a little shortage along the way, because I think this is kind of a dynamic process. We will find different venues. Some will work better than others, fair enough. But I think I've said it. Let's just make sure we're not in a position where somebody says, great, you know, we need 100, and somebody says, oh, I'm sorry, we ran out last weekend, and it's going to be a month before we can get our supply, or 3 months, or whatever. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to our public speakers in chambers and on Zoom.
We have no speakers in chambers. We have 2 on Zoom.
All right, let's do 2 minutes each, please. And for speakers on Zoom, note that when the first speaker begins, the queue will close. So if you are intending to speak, now would be an excellent time to raise your virtual hand. And we'll give you a second or 2 to do that. Okay, go ahead, Curtis.
All right, our first speaker is Sharon Luna. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, supervisors. I am grateful that the programs are being established to prevent children from using or starting drug use, specifically in regard to fentanyl. Campaigns are great. The real issue is dealing with fentanyl and other drugs coming into this country and county. It is interesting because my son, who is a recent graduate of San Jose State in criminology, made a comment that where is law enforcement in regard to working with the children? I was very impressed with Supervisor Chavez looking to the Youth Task Force to see what their concerns were. And my son actually stated, were law enforcement involved with this Youth Task Force, looking for ways that there could be a partnership and learn from the children what their expectations are. And so taking, he is 22, so I don't think he's considered old yet, but is working with law enforcement to see, what can be done. The role of law enforcement has to be, integrated in these programs. And in reading, I did not see where they would come as far as forming a partnership. And so these programs are great. And I think that it is integrating the law enforcement to work with the Youth Task Force to hear what they have to say and implement programs that would serve both youth and law enforcement in combating this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Blair Beekman. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. What Supervisor Ellenberg talked about earlier, ways that we really have to address counseling services and healing services with fentanyl issues. Good luck from the previous speaker, how to integrate those sort of concepts. Really good counseling services is really, things we're trying to better address in Santa Clara County, and good luck in those efforts. Very much of a thank you. That it sounds like the fentanyl issue is you're trying to find ways to get Narcan more available to more places in Santa Clara County, and I thank you for that. Good luck with the idea of the test strips that can measure how much that fentanyl is in a certain product. If it can learn to measure exactly how much, that would be even better. And I think that's a really helpful tool for people as well that I hope it can be considered also. And I wanted to remind that, we've had a pretty serious fentanyl issue with the, a pretty high up in San Jose City Police Department, who is, I've heard, passing fentanyl along into the jail systems. It's kind of a nurse practitioner, to wean people's addiction when they're in jail. And we have to be wary of that. And we have to really learn that, there is a real industry inside our institutions that promotes fentanyl use as well, that I hope you guys are reviewing and better understanding how that process can be a system of checks and balances, and how that can be distributed well and treated well. And possibly even, we can end bad distribution from that institutional channel. Good luck in those sort of efforts and overall review. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you. I am going to add one more item, and that is that under Supervisor Simidian's leadership, we now have a program that makes it possible for people to access pharmacy, pills and other things that when they don't have enough money for insurance and the pills are still good. I forgot what that program is called, that pharmacy. But I want to recommend that as part of the communication program, we educate people about that pharmacy, because what I fear is that people are buying counterfeit medication when they could go to a place that has real medication and that's safe. And we should really up that communication as part of this program.
Thank
Dr.
you,
Rudman?
Supervisor. Yes, I believe you're referring to the Better Health Pharmacy that's cooperated with Public Health, and very happy to move forward with that recommendation. Thank you.
I gave it a different name in my mind. I was calling it Sunshine Pharmacy, but Better Health is better.
I like that.
But am I accurate that that's how it works, that people who are underinsured can access medication?
That's correct. Better Health Pharmacy offers, as long as there's legitimate prescription, service to anyone who attests that they're unable to pay for either the full cost or even just their copay of medications.
That includes pain medication?
I will need to follow up on that, what's offered right now, and get back to you on that.
Supervisor Simidian.
The only thing I can add, and I think Dr. Reidman will confirm this, is that there is some medications make their way to better health more frequently, more readily, more easily, and are more available as part of the redistribution program. Others are scarce and hard to come by. And then I think there are some limitations on what state law currently provides with respect to drugs that are deemed narcotics, if I am remembering the term of art correctly.
Then what I'll request is, just as this comes back, that we better understand that issue, because I do think one of the concrete issues we just need to address is that people are accessing pills that are counterfeit, Percocet, Adderall, all kinds of counterfeit medications, and at least some of the parents that we've spoken to said that they believe their kids were taking pain medication until they got to a doctor and getting them from friends in their dorms. So I think it's worth us taking a look at that. With that, I'm going to second the motion that Supervisor Ellenberg made to move items 14 and 15 that would consider the large events, that request for that integrated plan that is relative to all services for drug and alcohol prevention, intervention, and treatment, and how it's embedded into the overall behavioral health plan. That we request that we set a goal for same-day treatment services as most appropriate when you're able to do so. That naloxone distribution not be suspended or ended without direction from this board. That there's direction to prioritize the evaluation of communication, prevention, and intervention plans. That we consider the opportunity to use the Better Health Pharmacy, that as we're looking at additional places to provide naloxone, that we consider large event venues, promoters, and locations such as the SAP Center and the Convention Center, that we include community colleges, we engage the courts and PD to also make Narcan available. That if necessary, we get an off-agenda report, even if it must be confidential, to anticipate the amount of revenue that will be available to us to address this issue over the next 5 or 10 years. That we report back, that there's a report back in a month on the timing of the equipment availability for blood testing and other tests needed to determine fentanyl and other drug detection. That we reaffirm that we're really asking our staff to look at authenticity in advertising, and that there's engagement of young people both in assessing whether or not the advertising is effective, and also that we engage young people in the peer-to-peer support, mentor, but either recruitment, training, or hiring as appropriate. I think I got everybody's comments. Did I miss somebody's?
I have one or two more questions which may or may not lead to piggybacking, if you'll permit.
Maker?
Yeah, it actually did mention about look into other jurisdictions regarding a potential buyback program, if that's something that's
yes,
possible.
thank you.
Yeah.
And the buyback program. I got it.
And then the other thing regarding, no, this is too specific, but look into whether it's TikTok videos or, something that the youth use, whether there are available material regarding highlighting the dangers of fentanyl, number one.
Yes,
and
that's...
two is whether and how we could publicize where they could get the Narcans from our system.
That's excellent. And I put that under the category of the authenticity of advertising. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But I didn't think about access to Narcan. That's a great point. Thank you.
Thanks.
Supervisor Samiti and then Arenas.
Thank you. And I just, forgive me if I missed this in the materials or the presentation, but the reference to Better Health Pharmacy prompted me to think, is there any I know the product is for sale at $45 to $75 a box, if I understand the current price points, at various commercial pharmacies. Is there any reason why it couldn't or shouldn't be, and I'm asking, I'm not proposing, I'm asking, why it couldn't or shouldn't just simply be available upon request at any current county pharmacy? Or is it already?
Yes, so I can get back with further details. My understanding is certainly Better Health Pharmacy and the public health pharmacies make naloxone available, and I believe that may apply at all enterprise pharmacies, but I can confirm that for you.
And I'll add that into the motion.
And I'll ask my staff to follow up as well, but I'm just thinking, if well publicized, that would be an easy. I don't know if there's an issue with offering the product for free and, limited quantities or down the street from. Then the second question is, and this actually comes as a result of a question I had from a community member in a recent forum. In the context of the settlement, the community member was expressing some frustration that, in his judgment, some of these companies, the public pharmacies, not the pharmaceutical companies, but the retailers, in his judgment, they were part of the problem in terms of dispensing the product too liberally, and now they were essentially able to monetize the solution by selling the Narcan. And that made him irate. And is there some sort of discussion about that out there in either the legal arena or in the settlement conversations? Or, I understood the anger. I didn't frankly have much in the way of a response to offer about the county's take on such a discussion.
There's definitely been similar frustration expressed on the part of lots of parties involved in the opioid litigation about the, I would say it's not limited just to the retail pharmacies, also the pharmaceutical companies who aggressively marketed opioids and then now have created pharmaceutical, Narcan included, interventions to deal with the crisis that was the result of aggressive marketing practices by the pharmaceutical industry. But I would suggest that Laura Trice might be in a better position to add anything beyond that. I do think that there's been definite discussion in the context of some of the settlement strategies related to doing the utmost possible to minimize that type of circumstance. So lots of times where pharmaceutical companies have been the subject of litigation, they've proposed settlement terms that would have advanced their business interests in other ways related to, for example, providing products as opposed to money, things like that. And so those kinds of issues are a pretty frequent topic of conversation amongst counsel and parties in pharmaceutical litigation, but I would defer to Laura if there's anything more to add in response to the question you posed, which I do think is a important one for folks to grapple with as we're thinking about how we hold accountable some of the entities that really contributed to this problem.
I think Greta summarized the issue really well. I'm not sure I have a lot to add, except that it is a tricky issue because the naloxone is so important. I think in the Teva settlement, Teva was one of the companies that was aggressively pushing for a settlement that was primarily focused on providing product like naloxone. And there is the availability of some of that product as an option in the settlement, but it's not the large portion of the settlement. So I think in that respect, the settlements did achieve a good outcome, but I think it's complicated and is an issue that's created frustration. And I think Greta probably said it better than I could.
But
Thank you.
not to put words in either of your mouths, but it sounds to me like what you're saying is, it is what it is. We're more or less sort of stuck with that irony / unfairness, if that's how it can be characterized.
I think that's right. I would also just add that a further challenge is different parties in a lot of this litigation have had different priorities in what they wanted from these settlements, which are negotiated en masse to try and achieve some of the more holistic resolution of multi-party litigation necessary to achieve any settlement. And so you will see what I think we, as a specific entity, if we were negotiating some of these settlements on our own, would see as suboptimal terms, including on some of those types of areas, but also, were the path available for resolution under these circumstances with at least some of the defendants. That said, I do think just from a more policy-oriented perspective, creating very low barrier access to naloxone is so critical, as we've been discussing today. And so figuring out the best path to do that while knowing it is also a resource that we want concentrated in the areas where it's likely to be of most benefit. And so trying to figure out the most efficient way to do that, and to the extent the settlement funds have been very effective in getting other entities who might have invested less to have more Narcan available. I think there has been some benefit even in those circumstances where there was a bit of the reality that that member of the public expressed in terms of the commercial benefit to some of the entities that contributed to the problem.
Final question, if I may, through the chair, and again, apologies if in 13, 14, 15, and the subsequent comments I missed it, but the role of our community clinics as potential distributors of no-cost Narcan?
So if I may, for public health, we are taking the lead on working closely with our community clinics, somewhat more through the CDC grants to both enhance their ability, as Supervisor Chavez was describing, to recognize substance use disorder, prevent it, and treat it. But through that also to be aware of naloxone as a potential solution and necessity, and make sure that it's available.
Through the chair, Dr. Redmond, let me follow up a little, and any member of the team, let me try a little more direct question. If I walked in the door at one of our community clinics, I'll pick Planned Parenthood, I'll pick Ravenswood, because these two serve my district, and said, "Hi, I wonder if you could give me some Narcan," what would the answer be today?
I do know they'd be able to prescribe it. I don't know whether they'd be able to dispense it.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But that is a specific goal of ours to make sure that is the case.
I'm going to look imploringly at the seconder of the motion and see if she would be willing, with the consent of the maker, to incorporate further investigation of the potential for distribution through our community clinics. I think they serve a segment of the population that is particularly less likely to be able to walk into a store and say, "Sure, here's $75 for a product I hope I never have to use."
Yes, I will include it with the consent of the maker.
It's fine.
Thank you both, and thank you.
That's a great question.
All right, Supervisor Arenas?
Okay, so I hear that the motion is what President Ellenberg made, and this is an amendment?
I read the entire motion into the record because I was taking notes while she was speaking.
Oh, okay, got it, okay.
I was just trying to do my homework because you all asked us to do that.
Okay.
Curtis.
So I wanted to see if we could add to that direction to work with our court systems as well as the public defender. I didn't hear those
I added
pieces.
that already.
You did?
And community colleges. Yes, that was.
I heard the community colleges.
Yeah, it was the same line.
It was the same line.
Yeah, but don't worry. I wrote it down for Curtis. You got it.
Okay, Curtis, God bless. All right, thank you.
I'll have to speak more clearly.
Shall we vote?
Yes.
Supervisor, I had just one quick clarification
Absolutely.
question on the motion, and thank you, Supervisor Chavez, for capturing the notes and reading the detailed motion to the record. I did hear both feedback to staff on issues that the board would like them to look into or approaches that they'd like staff to consider taking, but I did just want clarification on what were the specific items where the board was requesting a report back from staff. Certainly we'll take all of the feedback, questions, requests that we explore certain items and move those forward, but to specifically make sure we're calendaring and tasking folks with preparing the specific off-agenda or on-agenda report backs that related to the different areas of feedback. Wanted to make sure we had clarity on what were the ones you were expecting something to come back.
I think on all of them that were requested from my colleagues, and what I would say is that, some of them have a timeline, like an off-agenda report relative to what we think the finances are going to be available 30 days back for the equipment. But I think on all of these, they require a report back. Now, the thing that Supervisor President Ellenberg recommended was that as soon as possible, we're embedding these reports into reports that would already be coming. But I'd like to make sure that we see what this looks like on track and relative before it gets subsumed. And so my request was that by June, if this got subsumed, that would be fine. But in the interim, that we'd like report backs on.
You want a separate report back on each of the...
Well, what I would suggest is not doing I would suggest coming back, with the exception of those that are called out with timelines, that they come back at an interval that you all feel like you'll have enough work done to be able to respond to the board. So there are some that I listed that had times, and if it didn't have a time, I'm going to recommend to you that you all tell us this is when we're going to come back with work of Body A, Body B, and Body C, with the idea of getting it integrated in by June. Trying to give you flexibility. the intent is to give those staff the flexibility to respond.
Are you feeling it? Are you feeling the flexibility?
I think so. I'm really trying to, there are a lot of different items, and for our tracking and making sure that each of the items that the board is expecting and on a particular timeline, we're trying to, as
be as
you all know,
precise.
to be as
Yeah.
precise and to make sure that we're delivering the work product the board is wanting on the timeline it's requested. And so that's partly the request for clarification, but I appreciate that maybe to make sure I'm understanding correctly, you are giving us the flexibility, with the exception of the ones where there was a specific format and timeline requested, to decide how best to report back to the board, including by incorporating responses on some of these items into both existing reports and aligning it with when we think the work will be at a point of maturity where it's ripe for the report
That's
back.
accurate. And what I would say is that all of the requests of my colleagues, with the exception of the ones that had timelines and the additions that Supervisor Simidian raised relative to the all access, the access relative to community clinics, but even that is already a subset of work that you are presenting in the report. So the board made additions to the framework you've already outlined with directions you're already moving in, with the expectation that these would be incorporated, which is why I didn't give everything a timeline, but only gave those things timelines that were not already embedded in the staff report and plan.
Totally understood. That was why I was thinking you might not need the report backs, but that we'd incorporate it, and then, but I understand your direction.
Thank you. Thanks.
Supervisor Lee.
Sure. Just one last item before we vote. It might not be necessarily to be asked here, is pretty obvious, is if these settlements and court decisions comes back and then it turns out that there's more funding coming to the county, would you please let us know when that happens? Thank you.
Curtis, let's vote.
Wait. Just on that last item,
Sorry, try.
can you say what that was again? I'm sorry.
Sure. We talked earlier about how some of the secular settlement and some additional funding
Yeah.
has not been allocated, so we don't know when or how much it will be receiving. So if it turns out that we will be receiving additional funding through these type of settlements and whatnot and lawsuits, I would just want staff to bring us to attention so that we have more resources to put
So
into this.
one of the items already was an off-agenda report on that item. The only thing that I added was that if that required a confidential report, that would be fine, because some of this is part of negotiations, so that the board would be able to anticipate what funding would be available. So because I think you mentioned that already, so not exactly that, but I integrated it in.
On that specific item, the board had previously requested that county council provide an off-agenda memo at the time that any opioids-related settlement was done. That was direction provided by the board previously, and at least through July is an item that would periodically be sent to the board off agenda. So I'm not sure that there's new direction that needs to be provided on that particular item, but.
I think the only issue, and Supervisor Lee raised this earlier, or maybe I'm sorry, President Ellenberg, which is understanding the settlement resources relative to other resources as they were becoming available, so that we're not talking about only one source of funding. And so my hope was to have both integrated into a single report, so the board's not trying to look at multiple reports. That's the only thing I think was a change, and requesting that if the flexibility is needed for that to be maintained as a confidential document, because some portions of that revenue are confidential, is really important. And one point that just came up from our colleagues was the issue around whether or not naloxone would be part of any settlement, which I hadn't really processed that, but I think all of that means that may need to come off agenda, but with the integration of non-settlement money, again, so that the board understands the full picture.
Let's do it.
Supervisor Arenas.
Yes.
Supervisor Chavez.
Yes.
Supervisor Simidian. Vice President Lee.
Aye.
President Ellenberg.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. It is 12:40-ish. We have to address items 16. Oh, only item 16. I say we do it, adjourn, and then let everybody go have their day. All right. We're not too hungry? We can do one more? Item 16, the county tort lawsuit settlements report.
Yes, this item is a response to a May 16th, 2023 referral requesting quarterly reports from the County Council on tort settlements over $1 million. As stated in the legislative file, there are no reportable settlements for the prior 2 quarters. And we have created, the County Council's office has created a page on its website specifically for the purpose of reporting tort settlements over $1 million. And we will place all such settlements at that location moving forward. Happy to address any questions that anyone might have.
Supervisor Simonian.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that it's equal to or greater than $1 million.
Understood.
Thank you.
Do we have public speakers on this item?
We have no public speakers on this item.
All right, it is just a request for information. It is just information. We don't need a motion or a second. That dispenses with the item, and we are adjourned to next week, 1 week from today. Thank you very much.
Well, set a record. You should do the next one too.